Evolution already. It went from. All right. Good morning, everyone. We're going to go ahead and call to order this August 22nd, 2023 meeting of the Cannabis Compliance Board. Could I please have a roll call?
Dr. Young,
Present.
Member Merritt,
Present.
Justice Douglas,
Present.
Vice Chair Durrett. Welcome, Chair Guzman Freilich.
Thank you. We're going to go to public comment, but before we do, I'd like to just say hello to everyone. And I don't know, many of you might know that this last legislative session, the legislature tweaked our statutes a little bit and kind of changed up our board. And so maybe I'm the guinea pig, but this is the rotating chair. And we have our vice chair also, Vice Chair Durrett. But we were also fortunate enough to be able to keep the Honorable Justice Douglas, and so he will still be here. And thank you for your service. And you leave me some really big shoes to fill. But thank you. And with that, Sarah, do we have anybody online for public comment? And what we'll do is we'll just give them a moment because they get some kind of a number to log in, and then we'll just take public comment down here in the south. Is there anybody in Las Vegas for a general public comment?
One moment, Chair. I'm going to read the phone number.
Oh, thank you.
To provide public comment via telephone, dial 669-444-9171. Enter meeting ID 873-9899-6095, followed by passcode 619479.
Thank you, Sarah. Okay, if we could have public comment in the south. And just if you could state your name for the record, that way our court reporter can get you.
Good morning, Amanda Connor with the law firm of Connor & Connor. On behalf of Connor & Connor, I would like to thank Justice Douglas. You were asked to be chairman of a newly created board for a newly created agency. And as if that wasn't challenging enough, you were asked to do all of it in the midst of a global pandemic. And we thank you for all that you did for the Cannabis Compliance Board. Secondly, in November 2014, Newsweek wrote an article predicting that cannabis may be the first female-dominated billion-dollar industry. In the article, it said, "It seems fitting that a plant called Mary Jane may smash the patriarchy." Well, I believe Nevada is a prime example of women leading in the cannabis industry. On behalf of my firm, I would like to congratulate Chairwoman Guzman Freilich and Vice Chairwoman Rihanna Durrett on your appointments. They are well deserved, and we can't wait to see what the future brings. Thank you.
Good morning, esteemed board members. Hadina Fleece with the Board of Chamber of Cannabis. First of all, on behalf of our community, we wanted to express gratitude for the initiative in creating subcommittees aimed at assisting professionals within the industry. Thank you for your commitment to make a positive impact. As industry professionals, we truly believe that the concept of subcommittees holds the key to unlocking remarkable growth within our many branches of the industry. It's a visionary approach that can elevate our industry to new heights by harnessing the unique strengths and insights of each leader. This is about the heartfelt dedication we bring to the table. Subcommittees become vessels for the passion we hold for this industry, allowing us to pour our knowledge and insights into refining every facet of it. This structure not only promotes transparency, but also extends a welcoming hand to all those who wish to contribute. By providing a platform for diverse perspectives to unite, subcommittees open the door to a more inclusive regulatory process. In essence, the notion of subcommittees is not just a pragmatic tool, it is a powerful commitment nurturing our industry's potential. It is a rallying cry for unity, a declaration that together we can change the course of our industry in a way that reflects our values, work ethics, and shared goals. Thank you once again for your time and effort.
Good morning. For the record, Abby Kaufman, with the board secretary for the Chamber of Cannabis. So something that Chair Douglas said in the June board meeting stuck with me and kind of got me thinking. I believe it's on page 11 of the meeting minutes, where the chair said that what the board needs to be effective is for the industry to coalesce to bring all segments to the table, and that the board is only as good as the information it receives. Now, I really appreciate the underlying sentiment of this comment. To me, it is a receptiveness to feedback. It's an acknowledgement of the need to consider the way that regulations impact all sectors of the industry, and it's a willingness to engage in future public dialogue with the industry. That said, what the industry needs to be effective is for our regulators to take a bit more initiative in creating the space for us to contribute this information and have those dialogues. I know we need more than 3 minutes each month to have public conversation. I know there's a workshop in 2 days, but it would be nice if one time one of these workshops was about one of the topics that the industry has repeatedly and explicitly requested to have a workshop on, rather than one that is necessitated by statute. That said, again, I really do appreciate the sentiment of those comments and the direction the board is taking with the recent legislative session. And to be honest, I didn't formally prepare anything today because simply I didn't have time. Like I think most of us, at least all of the board of the Chamber of Cannabis, we have full-time jobs, and they don't involve making public comment to the CCB. We choose to volunteer our time and our voices to represent the interest of our members and of the industry as a whole, with the goal of impacting positive change. And so fortunately, organizations like the Chamber of Cannabis exist to help the CCB do its job. But right now, as a whole, the industry's job is to survive. And organizations like ours can only do so much. And so with all of the changes and with everything coming up, I just hope that I would like the board to consider ways and take the initiative to find ways to coalesce the industry to provide you with this information that, in the body's own words, is so important. So thank you.
Good morning, esteemed chair and members of the CCB. For the record, my name is Bri Padilla. I have the honor of serving as the executive director of the Chamber of Cannabis. I'm incredibly humbled and impressed by my colleagues and in their bravery in speaking to you today. Today, I'm also coming as the operator of a small business that has been working to serve the cannabis industry through events. And I'm here to express my concerns regarding the proposed rules for facilitating cannabis sales and consumption at large-scale events regarding events and festivals, which is currently under the review by this body. While I understand the appeal of such events in a hospitality hub like Las Vegas, it's essential to consider the local context and prioritize the needs of our community and our industry, some of what you have just heard. It's worth noting that the legislature has twice passed on creating rules for smaller cannabis events, and we are still in the process of finalizing parameters for consumption venues so that they can operate and be viable business entities. Therefore, the push for these rules seems to originate from out-of-state interest groups rather than serving the current operators and the local community. I strongly advocate for public forums and that around these rules that will allow us to get input from both the community, industry stakeholders, and operators like myself who have dedicated time and energy into this space and would like to do so above board. Transparency in the rule development process is paramount, and we believe that Nevadans have the right to be aware of any outside influences impacting our industry and community, and we advocate for creating rules that really reflect the needs and values of Nevadans. Thank you.
Good morning. Excuse me. Morning. morning, Chair. My name is Timothy Eliado for the record. I am here to make a comment in regards to the social equity consumption lounges. And I would like to state that I am currently had stated some claims with Governor Lombardo's office in regards to the previous within the previous subcommittee, and then also the previous licensing process. I would like to state some indications for the record, and I would like to begin with saying that the CCB appointed Aisha Goins to head the subcommittee for the social equity. I believe during the 81st legislative session, during the introduction of the consumption lounge bill by I believe Assemblyman Steve Yeager, I was there. I was present with Aisha Goins when I believe Assemblywoman Sandra Summers had indicated that Aisha and I, basically meet up together and come up with a plan for the social equity, because I was in direct opposition from the very get-go when the legislative that language in which Steve Yeager had introduced stated that basically um, uh, uh, basically limited the licenses, which is the consumption lounge licenses for the social equity, to just consumption lounge instead of the regular MME license in regards to, for example, cultivation, laboratory, and retail as well. The whole goal for social equity, as it was intended, was to open up, the floodgates for the marginalized communities to also have an equal opportunity, if not attempt to have an equal opportunity at this in this industry that we had literally helped start. We built this industry as medical cannabis patients, and ever since I believe 2015 onwards, with the introduction of recreational, everything basically became a monopoly, and we just fighting to fight the system that has monopolized this industry. In regards to the MME licensing, we have conflict of interest directly from the state legislature with Steve Yeager. You have Scott Rutledge, who's working directly with Tyler Clemens, our CCB director, and this is exactly how everything has transpired up to this point. Up to this point, it is, and I believe this is a RICO charge that needs to be thoroughly investigated. What we're asking here is, this is a crime against humanity. Nothing that the CEIC had done had basically propelled any community of color up to this point besides help themselves. I want to know, as an applicant, why the CCB indicated that they had received 99 applications during the application process, and my application number was 105. I wanted to know if my application was even reviewed or even processed. I had sent an email to the CCB in which I received a generic answer email, which didn't do any help. I also wanted to state once again that,
Sir, excuse me, I don't want to interrupt you. I just want to find out if you're getting to the end of your testimony. I just want to give everybody a chance, and I'm happy to have staff meet with you about your concerns about the responses that you're seeking.
yes, please, just one more. For the record again, Chandler Cooks stood right in front of this board each and every single time he has submitted an application on behalf of the CEIC, told the board, I have submitted an application, and never once did he indicate to the board that he himself was indeed an applicant. He was the dean of students for CEIC, and guess what? He got a license too, along with all the CEIC members. The night before the number selector was basically conducted, CEIC president then Aisha Gomes sent an email to the members urging them that the graduates will receive a license. This was before the drawing. How did they know they were getting a license if this was supposed to be a fair process? I have provided all evidence towards all of this. Please look into this so we can move forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
For the record, my name is Timothy Roberts, also known as Green Man. Please forgive any nerves I display. I have PTSD. Been in court 56 times for criminal indictments against me. It's hard for me to do this. Good evening, council members, Chair Frederick, Honorable Douglas. It's glad to see the legislature is finally kicking in here. My name is Timothy Roberts. I'm a Tier 3 registered sex offender. I'm on lifetime parole. I'm here today to appeal to the Cannabis Compliance Board to include a pathway for me to attain a cannabis agent card under SB 277. There are several obstacles in the current verbiage denying my involvement in this industry. For the sake of time, I'm going to address reasons I feel I deserve to be included in this industry, and a pathway to a legitimate process that weeds out candidates who aren't serious and sets the standard for the industry. First of all, I committed my crime half my lifetime ago. I served my sentence without a single write-up or a disciplinary problem of any kind, and that has continued on parole the whole time, 29 years ago. Without a single write-up or disciplinary problem, I achieved my educational goals, graduated from the structured living program, where I hung the flag of the United States of America daily for 18 months, and I became the head baker in prison. I have an honorable discharge from the Army. I graduated from the Hope for Prisoners program, where I received certificates from the Senator, Secretary of State, the Governor, the City Council, and the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. I have 41 years experience with cannabis. I cultivate a legal limit of cannabis plants at my home. I'm a card-holding medical marijuana cultivator. My parole officer and my therapist agree that I would be great for the cannabis industry. I've never sold cannabis in any capacity, but I was forced to use the traditional market for decades to acquire my medical marijuana due to the war on drugs. I have educated myself in cannabis cultivation, focusing on no-till living soil and closed-loop systems like Green Life Productions. I have been accepted into the Ganji program in the Emerald Triangle in California, where I will become a Ganji, which is similar to a wine sommelier. I have an autistic son with a traumatic brain injury. He suffers from grand mal seizures. And I have obviously post-traumatic stress disorder from being in prison. I use cannabis medically only. The cultivars I grow keep my son's seizures at bay. Here's the pathway I propose to attain an agent card with an excluded felony. Applicant must, 1, present a letter of approval from the Department of Parole and Probation. 2, present a letter of approval from the therapist if counseling is required by the parole conditions. Present certificate of completion of the metric track and trace program through the state portal. All of the requirements in place, including but not limited to submission of application, completing the fingerprinting process through a Department of Public Safety live scan facility, a passport, quality photo, payment of an agent card fee, applying a discount of this fee accountable for the social equality rules if applicable. A probationary period of 1 year holding the applicant to a higher standard. This pathway would affect excluded felons, not just sex offenders, allowing all persons to seek employment in an industry where minors are not allowed. And as the Chamber of Cannabis has pointed out, this would help prevent felons desperate for work, such as myself, from entering into the traditional cannabis market. Having my finger on the pulse of the industry and becoming involved is how I'm building my reputation. I'm a level 5 Google guide where my photos regularly receive 20,000 views. and all of my photos are of legal cannabis businesses such as Silver Sage of Planet 13. I knew who the head growers in Nevada's grow houses that are stable are, and I know one head grower personally. I know how Chris Wren and Steve Cantwell run their grows in anticipation of applying to these jobs. I see dozens of jobs posted in the cannabis industry weekly, and I can't even apply to them. I have recently begun the process of gathering private growers willing to donate their bottom bud or lower quality cannabis to the project I call the Homeless Homegrown Project. This fall's harvest will go to homeless medical marijuana patients as legal gifts they can't afford to purchase or cultivate.
Mr. Roberts, are you?
Yes, this is my closing statement right here.
Thank you.
Sure, thank you. In closing, please consider these points while making the industry available to felons. And thank you for your time and consideration.
Good morning, Madam Chair, board members. Mike Weeble for the record, White Pine County Manager. I'm here to speak on item Roman numeral 5 and support passage of the proposed regulations with a couple notes. I've read through the support letters from the industry, and you can tell that they want to support White Pine County, but they're also nervous about how this is going to affect the rest of the industry. You can read between the lines there a little bit. So I have a couple suggestions. One, this is for the deputy AG. There's a typo in the proposed regulation. If you look at subparagraph 5, regulation 5.035, the about 4 lines down, it says issues, and it probably should be amended to be issued. And then finally, the other comment I have is one way around it to assuage the concerns of the industry and still allow the rural communities to have that control because they know their community, they know applicants, they know what industries are flirting with permits in their community and how it's going to affect their economy. That a simple, and I've made this comment before, I think in the workshop, a simple population cap on which counties are affected by this regulation change may address some of the concern, at least alleviate the majority of the concerns that I see in these letters. So for example, in the first paragraph, when it talks about upon request by the Board of County Commissioners of the county, it can say something like upon request by the Board of County Commissioners in counties of population of less than 55,000. That simple addition plus the little change edit should provide a path forward for rural communities to get their first medical facilities put in place, production and cultivation. And it also should address some of the concerns. I mean, we all have concerns about the random number, everyone does. And I understand what the board is trying to accomplish by having that imposed.
Mr. Weeble,
Yes,
and
yes,
I'm
ma'am.
just going to interrupt you there for a second. Under item 5, we will have
Open comment?
public
Well,
comment.
I think actually, unless I'm called upon to come up and answer some questions, that's the conclusion of my comments. So we can move on. But I appreciate the board paying attention to that. Thank you. And we're finally moving forward. So thank you.
Good morning. My name is Katrina Saunders, for the record. I am Vice President with Pardon Me Please, which is supposed to address people that need federal cannabis pardons. I've been affected by the war on drugs at a state level and a federal level here in Las Vegas, Nevada. After meeting President Obama at a healthcare rally and asked him about medical cannabis patients' rights, he said he wasn't prosecuting. From then, I felt comfortable helping patients in Las Vegas get on our state program to learn how to grow because we didn't have safe access. I got sexually assaulted getting my meds on the street. That's why I went to the state of Nevada so I could have safe access and learn how to grow. Under that time, it was under the Department of Agriculture. They introduced me to a gentleman named Michael McAuliffe. When I met President Obama, he said he wasn't prosecuting. So then I felt comfortable working with Michael McAuliffe, helping patients get on our state program. A couple of months down the line, I was set up by an undercover DEA agent who posed as a sick patient. I ended up getting probation for my case, but I ended up violating probation for my Marinol use and other opiates I was on. I served my prison time, got out, helped build the industry. In 2016, I was in Vegas Cannabis Magazine as one of the women moving the industry forward. I both worked at the Silver Sage and the Source Nevada. Fast forward 2.5, 3 years in, they changed the law to exclude me for my felony, telling me I couldn't work in the industry. After I made hundreds of millions of dollars and protected people, made money for local business owners in the state of Nevada, I find myself fighting for social justice. I've been in Vegas Cannabis Magazine, again, High Times, on raising awareness on things that I've been through in the industry. With this past legislative session, you guys passed lounges. You guys wrote me out again by 0.5%. I didn't qualify. I had 3 people that wanted to invest in me. When going to CEIC meetings, the first meeting I went to, so I can definitely testify and echo the sentiments of Timothy Eliato about the collusion and corruption in that. When the first meeting I went to, they had guns at it, and it was an intimidation tactic to probably get me to not talk and to go along with them. I since departed from that group because they do not share the same values. They do not really sentiment in the social equity line. All the people got social equity license, but I somehow got written out by 0.5%. It's corruption going on in collusion, and you guys do need to be brought up on charges. It's ridiculous that I still have to fight for social justice at this late date after I've made money for the state of Nevada and local business owners, and I keep getting left out at every turn. Only that you guys write SB 277 to try to make up what you guys, what legislature had did before, Steve Yeager and Tick Sager-Bloom and everybody else from the last legislation. This wouldn't have had to been written if it hadn't been changed in the first place to exclude me and other people like me. My goal is for you guys to actually work with people who've been affected by the war on drugs and stop having another drug war 2.0. This last legislative session, I saw that you guys have another task force that you're creating to get rid of the illicit market. It's not the illicit market. It's people like me that don't have $250,000 liquid asset because they've been affected by the war on drugs and they're putting their lives back together. And we just want to be able to participate in the industry that we helped build. Before all of you guys were here, we were helping giving patients safe access, clean medicine that didn't have to be radiated or remediated. We had good business practices, and we were helping community at a grassroots level before it got tainted by MSOs and greed. I don't get to go to my family's soccer games, my kids. My family is split apart from this drug war. While you guys laugh and, oh, you miss soccer games. I've missed whole years of my kids' lives because I've had to sacrifice for medical cannabis patients in Nevada. And then to watch it be stripped and handed over to people for greed and for money purposes. It's really disgusting. I don't know how you guys think that it's okay for you guys to sell weed, but not for people like me and other people and call us drug criminals and criminals in the illicit market. You guys should be brought up on charges. It's not illicit for people to do what they love just because they can't afford to have a license that you guys are making out of reach for people to be obtainable. You never put yourself in people's shoes like myself that have been affected by the war on drugs. You don't care about our families. You don't care that we've been displaced. As long as you get to go home and have your steak dinner and take your kids to soccer, it's okay for white privilege, but not for Black women that actually were protecting patients and providing for my family. I find myself homeless because I've been so much stress and PTSD from this last legislative session. Every time I turn around, I'm trying to bring myself back up. I get kicked back down by Nevada state legislator. It's ridiculous and it's disgusting, and you guys will pay for it one way or the other. God will take care of what you people have done in Nevada state legislature. It's ridiculous. I spoke to the Attorney General about reparations because the state of Nevada owes me for my pain and suffering, for PTSD, and for excluding me repeatedly in this industry that I've helped build and protect and educate, and my intellectual property has been mined. And
Ma'am, I
Yes.
just want to give everybody a chance to talk.
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time today.
Anybody else in Las Vegas? Thank you.
Good morning. Good morning, Madam Chair Guzman Freilich, Vice Chair Rihanna Durrett, board members, Executive Director Climas. My name is Bob Karoko. I'm the CEO of Silver Lion Farms. After nearly 2 years of working with the CCB on this matter, I'm pleased that this body is finally moving forward with what I consider to be appropriate regulations to open a medical cannabis cultivation and production licensing round in rural White Pine County. The opportunity is something that has been required by law since 2018, as defined in NRS 678B.220, and something that White Pine County has been anxious to get going. So a couple of comments, I'll keep this brief. Regarding the new regulations, although the law explicitly specified that rural counties shall be given one type of license, one type of each license, there was no specific mechanism in the law giving counties the ability to open a licensing route. Finally, this issue appears to have been corrected in the draft regulations, giving rural counties the ability to formally request a licensing round. This, in my view, is a proper and formal, explicit fix to something that has been implicit in the law until now. Second, I appreciate the CCB taking recommendations and revising the regulation draft to add language that gives rural counties an active role in qualifying candidate companies for these licenses. I still don't like the random number generator in the selection process, as I don't think there should be anything random about this process. But at least the current draft regulations put county interests first, as they should be. I applaud the CCB for the recent acts of good faith in this regard. When I spoke at the prior workshops on these regulations, I ended my comments that day by saying the CCB has an opportunity to open a new, productive, and collaborative chapter between the regulated business in the state and the agency. A whole series of recent changes in representation, law, and governance surely point that this may in fact be the case. These proposed regulations are another example of how it may be a new day at the CCB. Sincerely, as an economic development CEO, I still believe in the promise and potential of Nevada. Thank you.
Good morning, board, and thank you for doing this. Congratulations on your appointment. And thank you for your service. For the record, my name is Donna Bath, and I would like to echo what both Mr. Weeble and Mr. Kurloko said. I've read your mission statement and tried to learn about this industry. As I've told you before, this hasn't been my world. We need this. It's legal. We need it as an economic development in our rural communities. We're all struggling. We were dissed on, for lack of a better word, in the legislature for not doing enough about economic development in rural counties, and sort of indicated that we were a sponge on the state because we are at a 3% tax rate in our community. We are 97% owned by government entities, and we're trying to run our government, our schools, our hospital, everything on a 3% tax base. Right now we have mining, and mining is wonderful. But in the last legislature, they went after the mining tax. That has really helped our communities. If that continues and we lose the net proceeds of mines, we're going to be back, and the rest of Nevada is going to be taking care of us like they did in 2006 when we were taken over by the Department of Taxation. So having this economy in our community, although I'm not a user, I definitely see the benefit of medical, and I'm not judgmental. If it works for people, that's wonderful. But for us, it's an economic engine. I appreciate the regulations that you put forth today. I do see that it's an honest effort to try and accommodate that. In your mission statement, it says that all communities within the state will have the opportunity to participate in the industry and prosper from its economic benefit. Rural Nevada is not like urban Nevada. We're a quantum. I've given you all an invitation to come to Ely, and that invitation still stands. Not just Ely, but if you want to learn about rural Nevada, I'll help you. There's 15 rural counties, if you want to define us as that. But yet we're the minority in the state. And I think the suggestion of putting the language in for counties less than 55,000 is a wonderful avenue. It's going to allow the people in the larger industries to not have to worry about the regulations that we are. Yet, it's going to allow us to accomplish one of your mission statements, and that's allow us to flourish in the industry, just like everyone else. And again, I appreciate it. I hope we can have some good dialogue and tweak this, that it's going to be a benefit for everyone. We don't want what's going to be good for us to harm anyone else. So again, we thank you and appreciate your doing this. Thank you.
Paul Michael Burgess for the record. Good morning, Chairwoman Freilich, distinguished board members, Executive Director Climas. I stood before this board over a year ago for a closed session. Member Freilich was not a party to this session. I hope members made privy to this information. In this time frame, I assume from my interpretation of the law and under other indicators that is unlawful for CCB staff to communicate with me. I understand this is a new agency and processes are being formed for the first time. I also understand that I am an anomaly. I will identify pain points for context. This law disallows me from engaging in civil discourse with CBC staff. Questions on new laws and regulations that directly pertain to me cannot be answered. I don't believe the law was intended to work this way. Pain point 2, this law does not state that I cannot be notified of what portal or program my application is in. Over a year, I have been in a state of limbo, which every court, state and federal, has determined as a cruel and unusual punishment. Per state and federal FAR laws, an applicant is prohibited from applying documents or applying twice to government agencies. This is called double dipping. It is unlawful. I stand before this board again to bring awareness to an emergency that the CDC, the FDA, and also recently by Capitol Hill at RFI has been put out, and people have responded before the August 18th deadline on the topic of Delta 8 toxic cannabis products and CBD and the hemp regulations and oversight. This is an important matter. It deals with the whole industry as a whole and dealing with children of dangerous toxins. My questions that I've been trying to get answered deal with NRS 678B-630. SB 277 has laid out guidelines around petitions to the board. What does NRS 678B-630 now stand with this new law to go in effect January 1st? Does it make it retroactive? Is the CC board and CCB staff going to use, or as this is an outline, if you have already used this statute and sent something to the board, does it make it retroactive? Does that applicant have to send in a new application, or does it start all over again? These are just some of the questions I would like to have answered, because it allows me and my business to move forward and also understand where the CCB and the governor's office stands on this. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Just a reminder, we still have to go up north and online to just keep your comments brief. Thank you. Appreciate that.
We had our own industry. We were attempting to create our own union You raided us, displaced us, the original people who got this legal in 2001, the people who originally put it in our Constitution. You destroyed an industry that was being spearheaded by none other than our very own Marines. You did this destruction with the thought of creating it in your own vision. Cannabis touches into almost every industry, and our vision was to see it develop where we could find our own place within cannabis. You destroyed that by targeting all those people. Then, when we sued in Parsons versus the state of Nevada, for lack of better terms, you basically told us, fuck your Constitution. And I can see that this is still your mindset, even after the lawsuit that the ACLU did, which was made to cater to you. And what you created is this monopoly, which you have done in almost every industry. I literally have people sending me videos from 10 years ago concerning farming and agriculture, warning me of you. It makes me boil, so I'll leave you with this. Remember that this is Battleborn Nevada for a reason. Free this industry and all the other industries. Allow people to apply for licenses and find themselves a place within this state.
Okay, see no more comment in the south. We'll go to the north. Member Young, do we have any public comment in the north?
There does not appear to be any public comment up here.
Thank you and good morning. Okay, Sarah, we'll go online. Do we have any comment online?
If you wish to provide public comment, dial *9 to raise your hand or click the raise hand icon. There's no one online wishing to provide public comment.
Thank you. Okay, we will now go on to item number 2, which is the meeting minutes. This item is the consideration for approval of the July 25th, 2023 minutes. Members, do we have any edits, comments, concerns? If none, I'll entertain a motion.
Well, this is Member Young. I'll move that we approve the minute meetings from the July 25th CCB meeting.
Thank you. We have first.
Douglas, I'll second.
First, we have a second. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any nays? Okay, motion carries. Thank you. Okay, now we'll go on to item number 3. Item number 3 is a consideration of approval for conditional license for cannabis consumption lounge. Mr. Staley?
Chair Guzman-Freilich, Vice Chair Durrett, Justice Douglas, Member Merritt, and Dr. Young. For the record, I'm David Staley, Division Chief of Investigations for the CCB. I'm here to present agenda item number 3, which consists of 3 requests for approval of a conditional license for cannabis consumption lounges. If this board approves conditional licensure, the applicant will still need to complete necessary local approvals and a final inspection by the CCB's Inspection and Audit Division before it can open for business. Item A is a request for approval from Global Harmony LLC for a retail attached consumption lounge under application ACON-A22-00040. Global Harmony operates a dispensary in Las Vegas and plans to operate its consumption lounge similar to a traditional bar or lounge. Global Harmony has submitted all information required to a conditional license status. No areas of concern were identified during this investigation. I'm available for any questions, and my understanding is that John Heisman and Kima Ogden are available to address any questions you may have as well. With that, Chair Guzman-Freilich, I will turn this item back to you.
Thank you. Do we have affirmative presentations?
Good morning, board. For the record, I am John Heisman, owner and one of the owners and CEO of Global Harmony.
Do you have a presentation for us or?
No, I'm just here to field questions or any concerns you guys might have.
Thank you. Okay. Do we have any questions from the board?
How far along are you with your proposed lounge?
Well, we are in the early beginning stages waiting for this approval, but in our existing facility, we do have the footprint to start the process of creating this little space for us, and it won't take too long because we already are in operation at this facility.
Member Durrett. So I'll fill in some fun facts about Global Harmony. It's one of the facilities that have been owners since the medical days, struggling through all the pains and challenges back then, and a small local ownership, right? Three owners. All the owners are very hands-on, and a third of that ownership is minority ownership. Correct?
Correct. Yeah. A third is, or 2/3 is a female and minority. Yeah.
And one other thing, one of the owners runs it's a medical clinic, a nonprofit medical clinic in town.
Yeah, she has some sort of medical clinic and
No, this I struggle with.
What is Hi, good morning, board. Thank you guys for your time. Yeah, I been in the nonprofit world for a very long time, helping the underserved population with health, wellness, and education. I have a medical center, a nonprofit community clinic, and we help once again the underinsured with medical programs, and we've been doing that since 2005. So we do a lot of things with veterans as well and seniors in regards to trying to help them get their cannabis cards, and very, very high population rate of people that we help that are cannabis users. So we tend to try to help them on the medical side a lot.
And last thing, you had a program for a while, right, where helping patients with HIV access
Correct.
cannabis, and it's really difficult to access it.
Yeah, that's correct. Our clinic, 85% of the patients are part of the Ryan White program, which is an HIV program that helps the underserved HIV patient population with their medical needs. And so we take care of all their health care because they cannot, afford it. And then, some of the programs that we do provide for them is if they need holistic pieces of this, we help them get their medical marijuana cards and educate them on what products help them.
Thanks. I know John knows how to run a facility, but you need a little help on PR, I think.
That's right. Absolutely.
Okay, any other questions from the board members? Anything up in the north?
No questions.
Member Young?
No
Okay.
questions.
Okay, thank you. I didn't understand that. Okay, so we'll then bring it back to the board for deliberation. Do we have any concerns or any questions? And if not, then I'll entertain a motion.
Member Durrett, I move to approve the conditional license for a cannabis consumption lounge for Global Harmony.
Member Merritt, I would second.
Okay, we have a first, a second. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay. All right, that moves us to the next item under this agenda item. If you could, Mr. Daly.
Chair Guzman Freilich, members of the board, for the record, I'm David Staley. Item B is a request for approval from Deep Roots Harvest, Inc. for a retail attached consumption lounge under application number ACON-822-00013. Deep Roots has requested board approval for a consumption lounge located on the existing patio of their Blue Diamond retail store in Las Vegas. Deep Roots has submitted all information required to move to a conditional license status. No areas of concern were identified during this investigation. I'm available for any questions, and my understanding is that John Marshall, Brent Snell, and Lori Rogich are available to address any questions you may have as well. With that, Chair Guzman Freilich, I will turn this item back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Staley. Thank you and welcome. Any affirmative presentations?
Yes, Madam Chair, members of the board, Director Klimas, Chief Staley, Agent Dean, good morning. And congratulations, Ms. Guzman Freilich, on your appointment as chair and Mr. Red as vice chair. My name is Lori Rogish on behalf of Deep Roots Harvest, Inc. With me today is Brenda Snell, Chief Administrative Officer of Deep Roots Harvest. Mrs. Snell has been with the company since 2018, and in addition to the traditional functions of human resource management, she is responsible for taking a strategic view of attracting, developing, and managing the company workforce. With that being said, I will let Mrs. Snell tell you a little bit more about her background. Good morning, Chair Guzman, Freilich, and members of the board and Director Klimas. I appreciate the opportunity for me to identify or to introduce myself to you. I do love what I do. I love the industry I get to do it in and the people I get to do it with. And so with that, I can get a little bit passionate, which means a lot of words. So I'm going to read instead because I could spend a little bit of time. So as Chief Administrative Officer of Deep Roots Harvest, I oversee human resources, compliance, security, and IT. And I'm proud of the efforts Deep Roots Harvest makes to get it right on behalf of our employees, our consumers, our communities, and the industry as a whole. I am a tenured human resources professional. Prior to joining Deep Roots Harvest, I was human resources director in the gaming industry, overseeing approximately 550 staff members. My background also includes working with numerous governmental regulatory agencies to promote the growth, development, and interest of business owners and employers in Nevada. Much of my focus over the past 5.5 years has been human resource centric. The company has allowed and encouraged me to introduce a positive and sound employment program which embraces fair and equal treatment of all of our staff members. Our program focuses on building and maintaining a culture of excellence, innovation through talent strategies, learning and leadership development, and genuine care for the work we do and the reasons we do it. And I appreciate the opportunity. Also with me today is John Marshall. Mr. Marshall is the Chief Operating Officer and an owner of Deep Roots Harvest. He is here to discuss and answer any questions that you may have with regard to the proposed design of the attached consumption lounge.
Good morning, Chairwoman Frolick and members of the board. Our lounge, co-located with our Blue Diamond dispensary, is a modest outdoor patio. Formerly Brando's Chicago Pizzeria and Sports Bar, a patio footprint already exists that we will just be resurrecting and bringing up to compliance requirements. This includes taller walls, cameras, additional access doors to the dispensary, and some screening. Patio itself is approximately 1,000 square feet and will include a canvas-styled covered awning with patio furniture, a few high tops, and TVs. Pretty simple. We anticipate that our patrons will use this space more as a tasting style microbrewery type concept due to the fairly small square footage and limited occupancy. So pretty straightforward concept, and we're excited to get moving on it. Can I answer any questions for you?
Any questions from the board? I have a completely off the wall question that I never even thought of before. What do you think of retail establishments only being entitled to one lounge, which I get the reasons for it and all, at the time it made sense. Do you think that will be revisited, and what kind of impact does that have on you guys?
We're still, quite frankly, we're still a little bit curious how the lounge concept is going to play out, which is part of the reason we're sort of doing a smaller scale concept here out of the gate. I think as it matures, it has the opportunity to expand. So I think it's a good program right now, just to get, to let it out slowly and see how they do and see how they perform. I don't think they're going to be a home run where we need hundreds of them on every corner. So I think measured approach is a smart move.
Thanks. Any other questions? What's the timeline on this?
Ours is limited tenant improvements, so really getting local, jurisdictional approval and building department. So we hope to be open maybe by end of first quarter, 24.
Okay. Do we have any additional questions? Nope. Okay. Then with that, any additional comments? Okay. I'll bring it back to the board then for deliberation. Do we have a motion? Member Durrett, I move to approve the consumption lounge for Deep Roots Harvest under agenda item 3B, the conditional. Okay, I'm going to look and see if we have any conditions here on the sheet. No conditions. Okay. Do we have a second?
Member Douglas.
Member Young, I'll second that.
Okay, we have a couple of seconds. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. And any opposed? Great, motion carries. Congratulations. Thank you. Okay. All right. Mr. Staley, that brings us to the third item under this section.
Chair Guzman Freilich, members of the board, for the record, my name is David Staley. Item C is a request for approval from KV Group LLC for an independent consumption lounge under application number ACON-822-00053. KV Group intends to open and operate its proposed consumption lounge, Green Life Preserve, in Pahrump. Green Life Preserve is intended to be a farm-to-table cannabis lounge that will combine high-quality food and cannabis. KV Group submitted all information required to move to a conditional license status. No areas of concern were identified during this investigation. I am available for any questions, and my understanding is that Quinine Villaslava is available to address any questions you may have as well. With that, Chair Guzman Freilich, I will turn this item back to you.
Very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Staley. And we also have another item next on this same company and it's a transfer of interest. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am. Agenda item, I believe, number 4 will be heard directly after this. And the first item on the agenda is a TOI application for KV Group LLC.
Okay.
Do you have an interest in handling them together, or the consumption lounge license, I believe, needs to be Ms. Villaslava needs to be found suitable first, and then the TOI would be second. So they could be consecutive.
Okay, no, that'd be good. We'll just handle them separately to keep it clean. Welcome. Do you have any affirmative presentation?
Yes. Good morning, Chairwoman, members of the board. My name is Quinine Villa, owner of KV Group. I've been in the cannabis industry since its inception, 2014. My husband, Stephen Cantwell, and I founded Green Life Productions, also known as GLP Cultivation Facility, as well as Green Life Produce Farm and Farm Store, both located in Nye County, Pahrump, Nevada. We are very excited for this opportunity. In preparation of this hearing, we've been in contact with members of our local county commissioners and have gone over our plan and our vision with them. I also want to thank Chief Staley and Danny Sandrock, who worked diligently on the suitability investigation, as well as this board, the Chamber of Cannabis, the Nevada Cannabis Association, and Scott Rutledge for all their guidance. Thank you. My husband and I are here for any further questions you may have.
Thank you. This is an interesting concept. Do we have any questions from the board?
Member Durrett, the question. So can you kind of describe what it will be like? Will it be in I'm picturing like up north, there's a little farm to table restaurant and it was a house converted to a restaurant. Will it be like that, like a quaint little kind of cabin with a few seats, or will it be like Morton Steakhouse on the property? Yeah, what's it going to look like?
For the record, Steve Cantwell. My wife and I purchased a home off of Homestead Road about 4 years ago, a 5-acre property that we've been converting into a small family farm using organic regenerative methods similar to how we grow our cannabis. The idea would be to move out of our home and convert our home into the actual lounge for the most part, and create more of a health and wellness atmosphere with a farm to table restaurant. People can feel comfortable and educate themselves on the use of cannabis. So kind of different than a lot of people are going to go. We're not going the party route, a little bit different.
Yeah. Member Durrett, it sounds really similar to the restaurants in Genoa, Nevada. I think most of them were like beautiful Victorians that were converted to restaurants. So it's not that far-fetched. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from the board members? Any questions from the north?
No questions.
Okay. Well, with that, we'll bring it back to the board for a motion and deliberation. Do we have a motion on the to propose?
Well, this is Member Young. I'll move that we approve agenda item 3C. I believe that's correct.
Thank
The
you.
conditional license for the KV group.
Thank you. We have a motion on the floor and a second.
Member Merritt, I was second.
Okay. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, great. Motion carries. Congratulations. Thank you. We're back. You're back up. Okay. All right. So now we're on number 4, which is the request for a transfer of interest. Mr. Staley.
Chair Guzman Freilich, I'm here to present, and members of the board, I'm here to present agenda item number 4, which consists of 3 transfer of interest or TOI applications. Item A is a TOI application by KV Group LLC, which just received conditional approval for its independent consumption lounge. TOI number 23001 was filed requesting approval for transfers of interest of 49% of KV to investors Michael Floyd, Brian Floyd, Gloria Boucher, Stephen Corey, and Andrew Triggs. Quinine Villaslava will remain the 51% owner of KV. No areas of concern were identified during this investigation. I'm available for any questions, and my understanding is that Michael Floyd, Brian Floyd, Gloria Boucher, Steve Curry, Andrew Triggs, Steve Cantwell, and Quinine Villaslava are available to address any questions you may have as well. With that, Chair Guzman Freilich, I will turn the item back to you.
Great. Thank you very much. And can you give us an explanation of what's going on here?
Good morning again, Chairwoman, members of the board. My name is, again, Quinine Villa, owner of KV Group. I'm doing a transfer of interest to my investors, whom I've worked with for the past 9 years. They are also some of the founding members of Green Life Productions and valued members of our local community. Our team consists of several local general contractors, electrical and security engineers. We are all very familiar and have worked in the cannabis space. They will be handling the construction phase and build out of this project. Behind me, I have Andrew Triggs, Stephen Cantwell, Stephen Corey, Michael Floyd, and Brian Floyd, and we're available for any questions.
Kudos to you. This is the way you do it, right? You've got everybody, all your handymen right there. Thank you. Do we have any questions from the board members?
Member Drett, I'm impressed that you're still talking to them though, because that's stressful.
We've had the same group since 2014.
That says a lot. Okay. Any other questions from the board members? Any additional comments from the group?
No.
All right. It sounded like you wanted to come up.
No, I didn't.
Okay. All right. Well, if we don't have any additional questions or comments, I'll entertain a vote or a motion.
Member Drett, I move to approve the transfer of interest under agenda item 4A relating to KV Group.
Do we have a second?
Member Douglas, I'll second.
Thank you. We have a first and a second. Any discussion on the motion?
Just one item. Mr. Cantwell? Not to keep you a secret, that you were a former champion in UFC fighting and World Extreme Cage Fighting. How did you get here?
It's been a long road. Definitely am in the right place as of now, though, for sure.
That's great. Thank you for that. Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Mr. Staley, next on the agenda, we've got Alternative Medicine Association, LC.
Chair Guzman Freilich, members of the board, my name is David Staley for the record. Item B is a TOI application by Alternative Medicine Association LC, which holds cultivation, production, and distribution licenses in North Las Vegas. TOI number 22014 was filed requesting approval for an administrative update to AMA's ownership to capture parent company 1933 Industries, Inc., which was erroneously excluded from taxation ownership records for AMA. The application also requests approval for Ernest Mark Zobrist to grant his 9% ownership to his son, Caleb Zobrist. No areas of concern were identified during this investigation. Alternative Medicine Association has also requested a waiver of NCCR 5.110 pursuant to 5.112. If approved, the requirements for prior board approval of transfers of less than 5% of Alternative Medicine Association's ownership will be waived. The company has adequately addressed the items required in NCCR 5.112 to allow the board to approve such waiver. Staff suggests that if approved, board limit Alternative Medicine Association's 5.112 waiver to expire on its next TOI agenda date. I am available for any questions, and my understanding is that Mark and Caleb Zobrist, as well as Paul Rosen, are available to address any questions you may have. With that, Chair Guzman Freilich, I'll turn this item back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Staley. We've got somebody on Zoom as well. Welcome.
Thank you,
Good morning.
Chairman.
Okay.
Caleb Zobrist on behalf of Alternative Medicine Association. We have Paul Rosen, who is our CEO, and Ernest Mark Zobrist, who is the current member of, referred to as AMA, is transferring his remaining 9%. He will no longer be a member. He is officially retiring.
Good for you. Okay. Any other comments or presentations?
No, this is a fairly straightforward TOI, just clerical corrections, and then the transfer of Mark's 9%. So we're available for any questions should you have any. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Then would you like to make a comment? Looks like you want to talk.
No, I don't want to talk. I'm just glad to be out of this.
Happy to get out. Okay. Any additional comment from Mr. Rosen?
Thank you so much, everybody. Just say quickly that I've known both Mr. Zobrist for 4 years, and I've been honored to be the CEO and chairman of the company since June 2020, and along with my board of directors, fully supports this transfer in large part because Caleb Zobrist is a key team member, has been at AMA for several years, even longer than I have been myself, and is one of our key team members. And I'm always excited from a governance side to have one of our key members increase their stakeholdings in the company. So we very much support the approval of this transfer. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I'll bring it back to the board then. And do we have any questions for the gentleman?
Excuse me, Madam Chairman. I'd just like to interject that we were the first company that was approved for cultivation in Clark County.
Wow.
We've been at this a long time. It's gone full circle now.
Yes, it has. Well, congratulations. And you're still here. Well, for the minute.
I'm passing it on.
Member Durrett, for the record, that kind of is helpful to know. I've heard the name of this operation since the very beginning, but I have never met any of the owners or really put, any information with it, like what you're known for. Kind of a lot of the facilities have kind of like a niche. Is there anything else you could share about it that we could kind of, if we're out there, like pouring a dispensary, we would be like, oh, that's AMA's product, or goals or anything like that you'd like to share?
Go ahead, Caleb. Oh no, please.
I would just add that, yeah, we're a value brand. We're a house brand. We try to make our products as cheap and accessible as possible. We know that is, especially in this day and age, inflation's high. There's not a lot of money left over, but people are still looking for their medicine. And so that is really what our goal is, to reach a price point that's affordable for the consumer.
And it's all locally owned or mostly locally owned?
Yeah, our parent company is 1933 Industries, which is a publicly traded company on the Canadian
Okay,
Securities
I'm sorry.
Exchange.
That was provided to us as well. So
Yeah,
thank you.
you're welcome.
Any additional questions or comments? Any additional questions or comments? Okay. All right, then we'll bring it back to the board and we'll entertain a motion.
Member Durrett, I move to approve the transfer of interest request under agenda item 4B relating to Alternative Medicine Associates, along with the conditional waiver of 5.110 pursuant to 5.112. That would be granted, but it would be set to expire on the next TOI agenda date.
Perfect, thank you. Do we have a second?
Member Merritt, I'll second.
Okay, we've got a couple of seconds. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Great, thank you and congratulations.
Thank you.
All right, next, moving right along on our agenda, we have item C, Mr. Staley.
Chair Guzman Freilich, members of the board, for the record, I'm David Staley. Item C is a TOI application by MJ Holdings, Inc. TOIs number 2100025 and 26 were filed requesting approval for MJ Holdings acquisition of MJ Distributing C202 LLC and MJ Distributing T133 LLC, the holders of cultivation and production licenses in Armagosa Valley. The board approved the relationship between the two companies for a management services contract in June of 2022, pending the completion of this TOI investigation. MJ Holdings has also requested a waiver of 5.110 pursuant to 5.112. If approved, the requirements for prior board approval of transfers of less than 5% of MJ Holdings ownership will be waived. The company has adequately addressed the items required in NCCR 5.112 to allow the board to approve such waivers. Staff suggests that if approved, the board limit MJ Holdings 5.112 waiver to expire on its next TOI agenda date. Staff has identified 10 areas of concern during this investigation with MJ Holdings and its prior controlling shareholder, Paris Baloris. MJ Holdings and Paris Baloris have violated numerous provisions of NCCR 5.100. Such actions provide grounds for the board to deny MJ Holdings' request to acquire MJ Distributing and find Baloris unsuitable to hold a cannabis license. In sum, these issues include the following. MJ Holdings is illegally in possession of 3,654 pounds of fresh frozen cannabis and illegally sold 496 pounds of cannabis, violations of NRS 453-339, NCCR 4.035, and NCCR 5.100. MJH acquired the fresh frozen cannabis after the termination of its agreement with Cureleaf Holdings, Inc. in May of 2021, recognized the fresh frozen in its inventory, and recognized revenue from the sale of 496 pounds of fresh frozen cannabis. Number two, MJ Holdings claims that it has been licensed as a cannabis establishment by the state of Nevada in its SEC filings, sublease agreements, and on its website. MJ Holdings has never been licensed as a cannabis establishment by the state of Nevada. Number three, MJ Holdings, through Paris Baloris and Al Reasonover, exercised control and operated MJ Distributing between January 2021 and July 2022 without a board-approved management services agreement and without valid agent cards, violations of NCCR 5.100 and NCCR 5.110. Number four, MJ Holdings and Baloris ignored TOI requirements and completed an unapproved TOI relative to the purchase and sale transactions of Red Earth leading up to the ultimate acquisition of Red Earth by MJ Holdings. Number 5, MJ Holdings executives and boards violated their fiduciary duty to MJ Holdings and its shareholders related to the illegal purchase of Red Earth and made intentionally false statements to the CCB when MJ Holdings did not follow its own board of directors resolution, which was submitted to the CCB as evidence of MJ Holdings separation from Red Earth. Number 6, MJ Holdings and Beloris entered into various sublease agreements for their benefit with third parties under cannabis licenses that they did not own. Number 7, MJ Holdings has continued using Al Reasonover in cannabis-facing operations, an apparent violation of NCCR 5.115, despite the denial of his agent card and MJ Holdings and his own representation that he would continue as marketing director and VP of sales. Number 8, MJ Holdings has demonstrated a continued disregard and lack of compliance with industry regulations. Number 9, MJ Holdings may not be qualified for licensure pursuant to the requirements that the board may consider pursuant to NCCR 5015. And number 10, MJ Holdings owes the United States Internal Revenue Service approximately $338,000 in back taxes with no plans to pay. Staff has discussed the concept of a conditional approval that would allow MJ Holdings to acquire the MJ distributing licenses with certain requirements and conditions that they would need to follow. I believe counsel for the company will be providing further information on potential conditional terms that would allow the transaction forward with board approval. I'm available for any questions, and my understanding is that Allison Johnson, Adam Fulton, Al Reasonover, Brian Hardy, Baxter Wild, Chris Reasonover, John Goss, Mark Zobrist, Paris Valoris, and Tom Valenzuela are available to answer any questions you may have as well. With that, Chair Guzman-Freilich, I will turn this item back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Staley. Affirmative presentations. I know without turning this into a full-blown hearing, I know you probably do have some affirmative presentation of some sort.
Chair Brian Hardy with the law firm of Marquis Arbach. Let me start out by congratulating Chair and Vice Chair, welcome you to the opportunities afforded you, and also give my grateful appreciation for Justice Douglas and the service he provided. I represent MJ Holdings, and Mr. Fulton represents Mr. Beloris, and Allison.
I represent MJ Distributing.
As a part of our affirmative presentation, we brought a number of people here. We've been having consistent and constant discussions with staff, and I want to tell you how much we appreciate Mr. Klimas's willingness to continue to work with us on this as well, to address some of these issues. In fact, I can go through each one of these 10 issues, and I have ad nauseum back and forth to address these. I've got binders showing why some of these issues are contested issues, and what we can do and what we propose to look towards the future. And that's really what I want to focus on is the future, but I'll tell you kind of briefly how we got here. The parties executed a purchase and sale agreement and a management agreement, and following the execution of that, submitted the TOI and the management agreement for approval, and currently MJ Holdings is operating underneath an approved management agreement. MJ Holdings participated in the TOI investigation process, and after years of investigation, the areas of concern were raised by staff during the exit interview. At that point in time, and during that process, Mr. Fulton had been representing MJ Holdings as well as its officers and directors. Based upon the identification of the issues of concern, Mr. Fulton made the determination that the company needed to retain outside counsel apart from the individual officers and directors. I was retained earlier this year to handle those issues, and we have worked diligently with staff. I can tell you we've got binders and binders of documents that I don't intend to go through today, in working with staff to make sure that we could get everything together. In doing so, the focus was the future. what this company may or may not be able to do in the future, what we can do to purge ourselves of the past. And that's really what we have worked diligently towards and worked with staff to do, is to address the areas of concern, which we believe we have sufficiently addressed every one of those areas of concern, and provided the documentation supporting our position with respect to those areas of concern. And then we've also provided proposals on how in the future those areas of current concern can be alleviated and or strictly monitored by the CCB. So over the past 5 months, we've been working diligently to do that, to show that there is a potential future for this. And we've been working with staff to show them what we can do, but we needed the opportunity to be able to get a transfer of interest approved so that we could continue that progress that we have made so far. So while we're here today, and we are happy to answer any questions that the board has regarding the past, we do have and have worked with staff to create a proposal for the future of what this company looks like. And so with that, a couple of things. First of all, is there any questions that I can answer as a part of my preliminary presentation that you have specific to past issues or the areas of concern?
Member Douglas, for the record. Going through this, and I understand the paper flow back and forth, but quite candidly, Mr. Valores has been the epicenter of what has gone on in the past. He is still entangled in your future. How are you going to alleviate the problems? Some of the allegations put forth about paperwork, and people are saying, nope, we never authorized this, from the department to individual businesses. I understand, but this entanglement goes very deep with him calling shots. How is this going to be alleviated in the future?
And I can address the future of what it looks like. If Mr. Fulton has any, if you have specific questions on Mr. Valores, I would defer to his counsel on that. But let me tell you from the company's position on what we're doing. One of the conditions, or a couple of the conditions that we will be listing out for you, are first, with respect to the control issue that you raised, Justice Douglas, is that the company has agreed that within 120 days of approval of the license, we are going to identify individuals to serve as permanent CEO, COO, and CFO, and identify not less than 3 board members. We currently have an individual who's been serving as the interim in these positions, as well as 1 board member. But it's been difficult in order to try to get people to serve in these positions when we're telling them, hey, do you want to come in and jump on and try to in all candor, do you want to come in and captain the Titanic? And I don't have a lot of people wanting to stand right next to me right now and say, yes, they're willing to do that. But I have a number of commitments that if we have a license that's conditioned with all the conditions on it, that we can gather that team together, that we can see the light in the future. And that's what we're doing. So we've got a commitment to do that within 120 days, identify not less than 3 board members, one of which will be identified as the chair of the board, and ensure that each position remains filled so long as the company remains a publicly traded company. Each individual must maintain an agent card during the duration of the time that they serve in those positions. All board members and C-suite executives for MJH shall be able to serve as interim position holders, but must appear before the board before suitability approval and provide any requested information to the board staff to assess their suitability before the position is made permanent. We have agreed to this additional condition to be placed on the license so that you have control over who is running the company. So that's the control issue, Justice Douglas, is that we are going to make sure the shareholders, you got to remember who I represent in this, is the company and the numerous shareholders that have invested their savings and other things into this particular publicly traded company. And they're ready to put together a new board, and I've already tried to do that in anticipation of this, and they're going to get new controlling officers of it. That's the first issue. The second issue is the question of how are we going to divest Mr. Valores of these interests? And into that, we've addressed this particular issue, and we've reached an accord with Mr. Valores on this. And this is the condition that we would ask be placed on the license as well. It says the company agrees to cease all activities, agreements, or contracts with Paris Valores, whom has agreed not to acquire, undertake, or procure any future investments, control, or ownership interest in the company, whether directly or indirectly, including but not limited through his agents, entities, or alter egos, to ensure that Mr. Baloris will not acquire, undertake, or procure any future investment, control, or ownership interest in the company, whether directly or indirectly, the company will lodge an instruction letter with its transfer agent. As you know, publicly traded companies operate through a transfer agent, which letter will explain and set forth these covenants not to transfer or purchase relative to Mr. Baloris. In this way, we can ensure both the control issues and the ownership issues that have been addressed. Mr. Baloris has already absolved himself of all interest that he holds in the company. The contracts that we have identified that he had with the company have all either been terminated or expired, and his shares have all been returned to the company and or sold into the open market. And so at this point in time, we are confident that he has no further interest or entanglement with the company. If we identify any future entanglement, we are committed to making sure that if we identify through some alter ego or whatever, that those will be terminated forthwith and immediate. Thank you, Justice.
Adam, excuse me, Adam Fulton on behalf of Mr. Baloris. And on behalf of him, I represent the board that he is committed that he is no longer involved or wants to be involved at all with MJ Holdings moving forward. And, you know, again, I think that there's been a lot of back and forth, like Mr. Hardy and Chief Staley has said, you know, we don't want to turn this into a 4-hour hearing, which it easily could do. We're not trying to do that. But I do think the focus of this hearing should be on moving forward. And I can represent you on behalf of Mr. Baloris that he will not be involved in MJ Holdings going forward.
And Justice Douglas, I can assure you that since the time that we've taken over and reached this accord with Mr. Baloris, he has stepped aside and undertaken all the things that we've asked him to do and cooperated with us on this. I think the only other individual, which I know that was part of the area of concern, that was part of the prior leadership team, was Mr. Reasonover. But I came into this in April. I needed somebody that would be able to give me all the past history, because that's what I have to address with staff is history. And so he had the institutional knowledge. He was not involved directly in the cannabis industry, but was involved in assisting counsel to understand all the things that had taken place over the last few years so we could address the concerns that the board and staff had. Thank you.
Would it be helpful for us to go through the conditions, all the conditions that we propose and staff to put on the license after it transfers? Would that be helpful for the board?
As a member of the board, I think that would be very helpful for us to understand.
Why don't we go through all the conditions?
Let me read them to you. I have a copy.
Member Drett, let me ask one question first, and then that would be helpful. What will Al Reasonover's role be going forward?
Going forward, he's no longer going to be involved with the company because again, he has a historical knowledge of things that have gone on in the past. So it was necessary to respond to every one of the inquiries as to figure out what was going on. But at this point in time, we've been under the understanding he's no longer going to have any affiliation with the company.
So would there be similar, like walling off like there is with Mr. Baloris?
So Mr. Reasonover had his agent card denied. If Mr. Reasonover wants to have his agent card reestablished, we can address that at a future point in time. And if he gets his agent card reestablished in the board, the purpose of this TOI is not to address Mr. Reasonover, and that hasn't been addressed. So I think that issue is an issue that can be addressed at a future date. And Mr. Reasonover has the right to bring that forward in front of this board and say, hey, I want an opportunity to work with MJ Holdings. Until such time as he has his agent card, he's not going to work with MJ Holdings in an operational capacity. As Mr. Hardy has stated, you know, he's needed for Mr. Hardy to get the prior this.
What does that mean he's needed? Like, so is he on staff in some way? Is he exercising ownership? Like,
no, after today. So in order to respond to staff saying, they're all based upon historical information that I simply don't have, right? And that many of the members, because of the company, the structure of the company, they don't have it either, right? And so we needed to have an individual that could go back and say, when a question arose from something that happened 2 years ago or 3 years ago, who do I have that has institutional knowledge from that? I'm not going to go back to Mr. Baloris, who's represented by counsel, but I have Mr. Reasonover. And so I was able to go back to him and get all of that information. He continued to work with us to be able to provide and cooperate with us.
Okay, but I'm sorry, what was his exact role? Like, was he an employee? Was he acting as an owner? A consultant.
He was a consultant
being
to help
paid by MJH Holdings as a consultant, which is I'm not gunning for Mr. Reasonover. I just want to know the role, and we don't even have to get into those issues if the case is similarly to Mr. Balearis, he's not going to be involved at all, and that's a guarantee. So, I
The-
mean, we don't have to go through the issues.
Yeah, correct.
I
The
think.
next, again, just to repeat, just to make sure the record's clear, Mr. Reasonover has the right to, we've spoken with him, he has the right to apply for an agent card, and then the board can evaluate whether he should have an agent card or not in the future. And that can come before the board in the coming months if Mr. Reasonover elects to do that.
And I just want to clarify that these conditions, these are some conditions that you're working with staff. And so it may not be a closed list, and then they will go back, they will work on these conditions and then and come back to the board and present what has been agreed upon.
So what we're proposing today is that the license, the TOI, the transfer of interest is pending before you, can be granted with the conditions listed on top of that we've discussed with staff. So what happens is you get a TOI, the matter can be closed as far as a closing happens where, the parties can move on and there's a license. But now the license has beyond what just the regulatory scheme is, but it has certain conditions that are affixed to that license. And those conditions are the ones that I can read to you right now that are going to be permanently affixed, or in this case, they're affixed for a term of not less than 2 years, absent extraordinary circumstances. So they're going to run with this company for a term of not less than 2 years on this particular license, unless for some reason there's a transfer or something else that happens extraordinarily circumstances that would alleviate the need for these particular conditions. But that's what we're proposing today is that there would be an approval of the TOI subject to the conditions that we've discussed with staff.
Okay, and it's certainly not our position to have anyone fail. We actually want everybody to succeed. And we know that there's a lot at stake, but me, for one thing, I'm very, very concerned with everything that I've read in these approximately 200 pages. But even still, I'm not here for anybody. I don't want anybody to fail. This means jobs. This means, this is just success. However, I do want to make sure, and Mr. Staley can confirm whether or not these conditions. It was my understanding that we're going to have some conditions that we've agreed on, but maybe some other conditions, and it would go to staff and to council and come back to us for a final approval. Or how do we know when we've reached that goal of the conditions? Because we'll be voting here for not the conditions, but for the transfer contingent on the conditions.
Yes, I think you could vote to approve it contingent on a final agreement to all the conditions. And then we would work with council to make sure we have everything in writing so everybody knows what's going on.
What we're trying to avoid is a conditional license. It's a license with conditions, meaning that we have the conditions that essentially run with the license. Oftentimes a conditional license is essentially, hey, once you meet these conditions, your license becomes kind of perfected or otherwise. We're saying, and what we're proposing is actually a little bit more onerous than that at some level, is to say that this is going to be a transfer of interest that has a license, and that license now has certain conditions that are affixed to it that are not affixed to other licenses.
Member Douglas, for the record, I understand what you're saying, but the buck stops with this board. And it would be nice for us to know what those proposed conditions are, whether we can live with those. And it's great that you and staff may agree, but we still may have some concerns. I, for one, and only speaking for me, I'm not willing to write you a blank check at this point.
And board members, what we could do is we could, again, meet with council, come up with the agreement, and have another meeting for you to consider it earlier than the next meeting at a special meeting or something like that. That's an option.
Just candidly, Member Douglas, it would have been nice to have seen those proposed conditions today so we could have weighed them. We don't have them.
Yeah, I think we do need staff to look over them and make sure we have an agreement. I mean, they came pretty late yesterday, so it's only so much we can do today.
Sure.
But I think you could approve it contingent on a final agreement, which you would approve the agreement. for the conditions.
And we can give you the terms that have been worked out, at least discussed with staff. And then, we can definitely proceed forward to have some formal written agreement that is executed consistent with the terms that we list out. There's 8 terms that everybody's kind of gone through, and we can list those contingencies as conditions, because it's not a contingency, it's conditions. These aren't something that once accomplished, they're done. They're running with this license for a period of not less than 2 years is what we're.
And I will comment, I don't think staff and I are too far apart.
Yeah, no, I
So-
think, we've gone back and forth. I think we've got the, if not the language, pretty darn close to the language already there. So, and I'm not speaking for staff on that matter. But I'd be happy to, let me at least, Justice Douglas, if I can read the conditions that are proposed, so at least you have them. And I've got, and you can have them into the record, as well as I've got a copy for the chair, if you'd like as well. So that way they've got that.
Chair, can I ask a question? Member Direct, for the record, is there a time sensitivity issue? Other than, everything, time is money and we all got to move along here, but is there, if this waited 1 month, which I think it's an eloquent solution to vote on it contingent upon the conditions, but either way, if that didn't happen for you, what would happen in the next month?
Currently, what they're working on is we've got sellers that are anxious to be able to, this matter's been obviously pending for quite a long time, that even predated the board. And so they're waiting to have a closing, and we've got interest payments that are accruing with respect to certain obligations under the contract, that there is a level of, as we're moving forward, we want to have all the financial wherewithal that we need in order to be able to continue to succeed.
Chair Guzman Freilich, members of the board. I support the company's need to get this license transferred. Its economic viability is not great. And if it is the goal of the board that is comfortable with a conditional approval moving forward to help the company move forward, the license transfer component of it is going to be beneficial to the company earlier than later. One of the issues we're concerned with to review under NCCR 5015 is the company is a going concern. Its assets its liquid assets are low, and the components of its settlement agreement deal with attracting and retaining qualified C-suite executives and board of directors that can operate a publicly traded company, which is a little bit more complex than a regular company. I don't believe those candidates would be interested with the if we were to wait a month. So in sum, I support the transfer of the licenses sooner than later, but I don't know the mechanical aspects of how you tie the conditions that need to be tied up with both Chris and the rest of staff. But we support in principle the argument that Mr. Hardy has presented for this transaction.
Mr. Staley, Chief Staley is adequately, I really appreciate Chief Staley's candor on that. And one of the things it may be is that I don't know if, and what I've seen, I guess, in the past on other agencies, is a contingent approval subject to the staff preparing formal documentation, so that, in other words, it's approved, right? And staff go out and put a formal documentation together. And then once that documentation's together, right, then those would be the conditions that'll be stated upon the approved license. Does that make sense? I'm trying to.
Where's a contingent approval
Of a license
with conditions?
That's it. You've got it. Exactly, Chair. That's what we're looking at.
This is Chair Douglas. Excuse me, Member Douglas for the record. I'm looking at kind of the new membership break with, if we approve it, it would be very helpful for us to at least hear what your proposed conditions are. We're operating, it's like blind man's bluff right now. I don't want to put us at odds down the road with our own staff, having given you a feeling that it's okay and we haven't seen it yet and we may not agree.
May I approach?
So that's kind of the problem area right now.
Do you have enough copies for everyone? We don't have access to we could take a copy with our phone too. I'm wondering if maybe we're going to let's take
I've got 3 copies.
okay. Is everybody okay?
It's more important that the chair gets a copy.
Yeah.
Well,
We need to probably read it into the record as well, so that the record is clear on that.
right. Can we take like a 15-minute break here? Let's take a look at those conditions. We'll come back on the record, read them into the record, and then determine if anybody has any concerns. Okay. We have a 15-minute recess. We'll be back here right before 11. Okay, we're back on the record. This is our August 22nd, 2023 Cannabis Compliance Board. We took a brief 15-minute recess. We are back. Everyone's had a chance to take a look at these conditions that are proposed. Does anybody have any questions? So I think that the way that this is going to happen, and you guys, all of you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think what we're going to do is we're going to read these conditions into the record, and we will vote on a license contingent upon going back with staff and coming up with these conditions that are going to be attached to the license. And then at some point, we're going to get the final product back for at least for us to look at. It's already a done deal, but just for us to look at. And then if there's any fallout or anything like that prior to that, we can always put it back on the agenda. But for now, I think that's my understanding. Is that correct?
Yes, I believe so. And I think we would need to be clear that if the contingency is not met, then it's going to have to be put back on an agenda to see what we would do with the transfer and what the status would be at that point.
Again, the contingency being coming up with the conditions that go with the license.
Yeah, I believe we'll be able to do it, but just in case.
Okay. Anybody have any questions about these proposed conditions? And I'm sure that the language may not be final here, but this is the idea.
And I can read them into the record if you'd like, Madam Chair, or however you want to proceed.
That would be great. Yes, please. Thank you.
Perfect. So what we're proposing is a conditional approval of the license with the following conditions in sum or substance. That MJ Holdings must provide an initial status report on the status of the company's operations within 3 months after the CCB approves the written agreement and quarterly thereafter, consistent with the company's quarterly SEC reporting. 2, the company shall within 120 days identify individuals to serve as permanent, not interim, CEO, COO, and CFO, and identify not less than 3 board members, one of which shall be identified as the chair of the board, and shall ensure that such positions remain filled so long as the company remains a publicly traded company. Each individual must maintain an agent card during the duration of the time they serve in such positions. All board members and C-suite executives of MJ Holdings shall be able to serve as interim position holders, but must appear before the board for suitability approval and provide any requested information to board staff to assess their suitability before the position is made permanent. CCB shall reserve the right to identify potential civil penalties related to MJH's actions during the term of its management agreement, during which MJ Holdings was subject to the CCB's jurisdiction. However, prior to the service of any complaint, the parties would agree to negotiate certain regulatory violations and the civil monetary penalties for those violations, which shall not include revocation of the license, and the parties shall negotiate in good faith to timely effectuate the same. 4, MJ Holdings TOI approval is subject to the agreed upon conditions, and MJ Holdings can be subject to disciplinary action for violation of any of these conditions. MJ Holdings may request removal of the agreed upon conditions from its license after 2 years, and the CCB would have to vote to approve removal of any or all conditions. 5, the CCB and its staff would continue to monitor MJ Holdings and may request additional information or documents from MJ Holdings as a part of this continuing monitoring. 6, the company agrees to cease all activities, agreements, or contracts with Paris Boulouris, whom has agreed not to acquire, undertake, or procure any future investments, control, or ownership interest in the company, whether directly or indirectly, including but not limited to through his agents, entities, or alter egos. To ensure that Mr. Boulouris will not acquire, undertake, or procure any future investment control or ownership interest in the company, whether directly or indirectly, the company will lodge an instruction letter with its transfer agent, which letter will explain and set forth these covenants not to transfer or purchase relative to Mr. Boulouris. 7, the company shall provide the CCB with updates on the pending litigation involving Jim Kelly and Chris Dubeck, including providing staff with copies of all dispositive orders. And 8, the company is required to maintain compliance counsel at all times.
Thank you. Do we have any questions?
You've indicated that this is, Member Douglas, for the record, indicate a publicly traded company. What is the makeup of the shareholders to the best of your knowledge? And I understand you have minority shareholders, but what are the percentages?
So there was, at the time of the TOI, Mr. Baloris was approximately a 40% shareholder. But those shares have all since been returned to the company and are currently being held as unissued shares. And it's an approximation of 40%, plus or minus. And then the remainder of the shares, I believe as it currently sits today, Mr. Jim Kelly holds approximately 13% interest in the company, and he would be one of the above 10% shareholders. But I don't believe that there are any other shareholders with anything beyond that significant percentage at this point in time. Everybody else would be a minor shareholder traded on the publicly traded within the publicly traded company.
Additional questions? Member Drett, I think I would recommend adding information on what would happen or a contingency plan if you don't find those permanent positions. Like, for example, that you'd come back before for an extension or something like that if they weren't identified within 120 days. Although I don't know if this company will exist if you don't find those within 120 days. And then I would like a little more fleshed out the monitoring, the continual monitoring, because I mean we to a certain extent monitor all licenses. So what would that monitoring entail?
I think that the monitoring has contemplated in addition to all of their other obligations that the company would hold underneath the statutory and regulatory scheme. It's monitoring on these conditions specifically as well, right? And so we've as a company agreed that we're willing to go underneath even a stricter scrutiny than others and have the monitoring include all of the conditions that have been applied.
Okay. And then the 120 days, I think maybe just add that, well, this was Member Merritt's idea, that they could, you could come back sooner on that if you identify somebody sooner.
We're hoping to identify them as soon as we can. Again, it comes back to the fact that once we have an approval of a TOI and we've got the conditions all finalized up, we can begin identifying people that want to come on to make this company a success. And we think we've identified some people that may be willing to do that. Nobody wants to jump on until they know whether we have a license or not.
And as this board knows, being a board member of a publicly traded company carries fiduciary obligations and responsibilities under the law.
Correct.
It's not like just being one of the Nevada LLCs. You're a board member of an LLC. Being a board member of a publicly traded company carries ramifications with it.
And reporting obligations.
Any other questions? Concerns, comments? How about up in Carson? Member Young?
I guess I did have one question in regards to the structure of MJ Holdings. And this might have already been answered from the question from Member Douglas, and that is the CDN company, the shareholder, it's 42%. Is that the makeup? Is that the publicly traded? Or I'm just trying to understand who makes up CDN company.
Dr. Young, David Staley for the record. CDN Company is a dispository entity that holds the shares for shareholders. They can choose to either hold shares individually, which would be that if you're looking at page 7, minority shareholders of almost 27% includes individual shareholders who hold their shares in their own name through trusts or individually. CDN Company is a holding company / clearinghouse, and it allows the shareholders. The CDN Company is just a service that holds those shares and facilitates transfers. CD does not have any voting rights, and typically the shares that are placed in this structure are for passive investors only that aren't very active. They have the shares and they just want it in a place where it's easy to move them. So even though CD and Company as an entity represents almost 42%, it really is maybe 100 or 200 different shareholders that all own 0.2 or 1.3 or something like that. But it's not an entity in its own right that can control the voting rights held by those shares.
Thank you, Chief Staley.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Yeah, that is a major concern because we're looking at roughly 70% between the minority shareholders and CD and Company, who theoretically aren't going to be even represented. They're just passive investors. So that 30% is going to be wagging the dog, so to speak, and which goes to providing within 120 days 3 board members who are going to be responsible for the direction of this company. And the concern is them being subverted by outside interests, not knowing who they are. And I phrase this in terms of how do we as a board put a mechanism in to say, you're doing it right, or on the alternative, we're not comfortable, we need to end this now. And even though it has a mechanism of us having a hearing, a disciplinary action for the board based on an unnamed disciplinary action that we still are involved with that's now stretched over a couple of years, I don't want to see the board get back into that as a member of this board. So the question is, from a comfort level, looking at how we can really make sure you adhere to the timelines or things that you put forth and not get in a situation, as alluded to by Vice Chair, of you coming back and say, can we have another 2 weeks or another 2 weeks? We're close. We want to hold your feet to the fire to get whatever it is you're doing done. Just stay on the positive side.
One of the, and addressed a couple things there. One of the issues that you had was a concern about having to come back. One of the benefits that we have is we're going to identify them, and they can serve as interim until they become permanent. They can't become permanent. So we've contemplated that there is going to be a transitional period around there. So we can get these individuals in as interim CEO, CFO. They can get an agent card, and then what's contemplated is they're going to be back here so you can complete your full and complete investigation while the company is able to continue to move forward. So it's a really nice balance, we think, for the board to be able to understand, hey, these guys are serving and they've got an agent card application. They've been approved for the agent cards. They can be interim and then complete a full and complete investigation on suitability for them to serve as a permanent in that position. So we think that with respect to kind of the control issue, we've mitigated that particular issue with this particular agreement that we've reached.
Member Douglas, David Staley for the record, and Mr. Hardy, would it address your concerns if perhaps we added a condition spelled out the ability of staff to compel the company to appear on a date certain or on the next board meeting, such that if we identified an issue of whatever, in the company's operations, there is a condition that we've agreed on with the company, which would go into effect and would compel them, or they would agree to appearing at the next board meeting?
I just want to make sure, Chief Staley, to address, I think what Chief Staley said, I just want to make sure I understand what's being proposed is that in lieu of actually bringing a complaint or something along those lines, that it would be essentially become immediately to the board without any due process on the, I just want to make sure I understand, because if there's an issue that arises that staff has, then we'd want to have an opportunity to respond to it, work with staff to try to get through it. And then if we can't, we can bring it before the board. I would assume that would be still part of the process. I just want to make sure that it's not, hey, look, come on over and we'll tell you at the board meeting what's going to happen. You just understand the process there. So
David Staley for the record. What I'm proposing is that through our negotiations, we agree on certain steps that we can initiate as the regulator. I'm sure your experience with this TOI process, nothing was hidden. You know, I don't personally believe that there's any value to surprising you in front of the board. You aren't prepared to give them intelligible answers. It doesn't serve anybody. So, really what I'm proposing is just a mechanism where it's clear that as the regulator, we can trigger one of the conditions that will provide that you'll appear at the board at the next board meeting, and then we'll have the same kind of dialogue that you've experienced during this investigation.
and I think that would be appropriate so long as we can have a notice and response period is all I'm proposing. And so that way there's a, because when we say the next board meeting, right? I mean, that's the issue is that if there's something that there's a condition that there's a question on, did you guys or didn't you find your CEO? And we're saying, yeah, here's his name, and then it's all resolved. That's not on the board meeting. But if we get something where notice and response, then we get called in before the board, we can at least know that we've gone through the process, right?
I anticipate this would only be used in
Extreme
a real extreme circumstance.
And we understand that.
But a notice period, I think, would be appropriate. I would be comfortable with a short notice period, but that's subject to discussions if the board believes that approach is appropriate.
Well, even though we are, I mean, each case is each case we're going to treat, depending on that case. So we're not saying that we're going to treat you differently than anybody else. I think we have processes in place for doing all of this. So I think that just brings us back to where we're at right now, which is if we're in agreement with this language, this is not the final, correct? We're basically going to send this back to staff for the parties to work on it together. And what we're going to do here is basically just vote on a contingent or on a license approval of the transfer of interest contingent on conditions for the license. And those conditions are going to be negotiated between the parties.
Consistent with what we have here and whatever other issues that come up as
including, but not limited to.
Correct.
Okay. With that said, does anybody have any additional questions or concerns, comments before we go to a vote?
But we're just so we're clear, and I think Mr. Fulton raises a good point. These concepts and principles that we've set forth here are the concepts and principles that we've all kind of work towards, and we're going to continue to work towards. And this is the kind of what's going to serve as an outline for our future discussions, right? I mean, that's kind of one of the questions I want to make sure that I understand is that this is working as a conceptual outline, and you guys approve or disapprove depending upon how the vote goes of these concepts, and then whatever other concepts are needed to facilitate these particular concepts.
That's my understanding.
Okay, perfect. I just wanted to make sure.
Okay.
Just briefly, Allison Johnson for MJ Distributing. I just want to understand my client's rights and responsibilities as we move forward in this process. We fully support, and I've watched this investigation with great interest to see how it plays out, because I don't practice in this area generally. And I've been so appreciative of the way that staff has worked with the potential purchaser to address concerns. But as it relates to this contingent conditional approval, it's my understanding that the transaction will close. My client's licenses will be transferred contingent upon a finalized agreement, and then it will be a conditional license that will then be up to MJ Holdings to facilitate the license. Is that the idea?
That's correct, with the exception of it won't be a conditional license. It'll just be a license with condition.
A license, again, that's
Great.
right. Getting the vernacular correct so I understand that my client's license will in fact be transferred to MJ Holdings, and then they'll be responsible to meet the conditions that are provided by the board. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Very good. Thank you.
Member Durrett, so just to fully confirm, if the conditions weren't met, the recourse wouldn't be unwinding the transaction. It would be potential discipline.
It's our license, so you come in right against us for discipline.
Right.
We're now
got
the
it.
license holder.
Any other questions for the board or comments of the parties? Okay. All right. Well, then what we'll do is we'll, and any comments or any, nope, from your represented. Okay, perfect. Then we'll just bring it back to the board for deliberation and I'll entertain a motion.
Chair, David Staley for the record. I'm sorry. After all of this, please don't forget that they have requested pursuant to 5.112.
Thank you for that.
Daily.
Okay.
Member Durrett, for the record, I move to approve the transfer of interest requested under agenda item 4C by MJ Distributing, contingent upon a finalized agreement between staff and the subject licensee that sets forth the conditions that they will operate under for the next 2 years. The license would be is not conditional, but would be operating under these conditions if the board does so approve. And in addition, we would be granting a request for a waiver under 5.110 pursuant to 5.112.
Good job. Yes. Okay. All right. We have a motion on the table. Do we have a second?
Member Merritt, second.
Okay, we have first we have a second. Any discussion on the motion?
Member Douglas, for the record, I will not. Member Douglas, for the record, I'm not going to support what's on the table at this point. What was being advertised as a transfer of interest. I don't so much have a problem with the transfer of interest. I do have a problem with the operation. And clearly, from my standpoint, if we don't have the finalization in writing at our next meeting, I would be wanting to see us going forward with some type of issue as to their license, but their license isn't before us today. What's before us today is a transfer of interest. So we're doing some things that I'm having difficulty really understanding.
And I'm not sure if this would help Member Douglas, but I know that as part of the conditions, there is the item of staff looking at past violations. Is that correct? And as with all other licensees, if staff determines that a violation has occurred, then that would be phase 2. I'm calling it phase 2. That's not their words, but.
And Madam Chair, Douglas, for the record, I'm appreciative of those statements to make it clear so there be no surprise to anyone should a disciplinary action be called in the future for past violations. This is not a forgiveness of those issues if they should arise in the context of not making this work. But thank you for that clarification.
Okay. So we have a first. I forget, do we have a second? We have, okay. Yes, we have a second.
This is Member Young. I also, I'll be honest, I'm not in support of this TOI the way it's presented. I think it's just not very clean. There's a lot of questions. I kind of feel like we're kind of letting the genie out of the bottle before we kind of know what the final, even structure of the company is going to be with the CEO. So I'm not against the transfer in total, I'm just against the transfer as it's presented right now.
Okay. Well, let's call for the vote and see where we're at, and see if we have to start over again with a new motion or if it carries. Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those nay, vote nay.
Nay.
Okay. Motion carries, and I just want to say that I'm going to trust staff and council to work with the parties and come up with something solid. And so that's my reasoning for voting in favor of, is because I'm going to put my trust in staff and council to come up with a good agreement and report back on the status.
Thank you so much, members of the board. We appreciate your confidence and look forward to gaining the confidence of the others. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, and with that, we will go to the consideration of the proposal of the adoption, amendment, and or repeal of the Nevada cannabis compliance regulation, and I'll let Michael read into the record all the regulations that are affected by this proposal.
Good morning, Chair and board members. For the record, I'm Michael Miles, Deputy Director of the CCB. The item that is up for adoption is the regulations to grant one medical cultivation and or one medical production license to counties that have not participated in the cannabis industry. These regulations in a different form were brought before the board, and the board asked staff to review these regs and come up with other options, specifically options to assist the counties in further developing their economies. The additions to these regulations give the counties the option to submit letters of support. These letters will be included in the minimum scoring guidelines in the application process. And the process allows counties that have not participated in the cannabis industry input into the economic development of these counties. Again, 5.020 is specifically a notice provision for calling for applications. Again, this is going to be for all types of license in the future, not just the 5.035 license or a cannabis consumption line license, but that's the only one that carries through all licenses. Again, 5.035, again, we've discussed before, this specifically is for a county to submit a petition to request a potential license be given to a county for specifically a medical cannabis cultivation license or a medical cannabis production license. Again, this only is usable as if the county does not have any such licenses. And the rest of it is very similar to the consumption lounge licenses. 5.042 is the submission of the application. Five 5.047 is the suitability investigation of the cannabis establishment after the application has been accepted. And 5.052 is obtaining the final license after all final inspections have occurred.
Okay.
Available for any questions you have.
Thank you. Any board members have any questions for staff before we open it up for public comment?
Member Drat, I have questions. This is a little off the wall, but I'm just curious, since we'd be issuing a medical license under SB 277, would it eventually become a dual license?
Yes, it would.
Under 5.020, number 1, it says the board will determine whether a sufficient number of cannabis establishments exist. I'm just wondering, I don't think that applies here because this is a case where they were never issued one, but for where are we at on that? I think, does the market study that has recently been funded by IFC play into determining whether a sufficient number of cannabis establishments exist? Are we waiting for that market study?
It could be. 5.020 is literally just a generic regulation that will cover any licensing round in the future, not just this, not just consumption lounges, anyone that we are allowed to do in the future. That's literally all it's for. And yes, potentially, if we do the study and find that other licenses, you know, could be applied for, again, that would be completely up to you, up to the board, whether we do that or not. Obviously, outside of dispensaries are limited by statute and would require legislative change, actually, along with consumption lounges as well.
Okay. And then another question. Okay. Under so under okay 5.047, the long one. You look at page 9, that'll be easier. Under E, it states the board will determine on a case-by-case basis the relative weight to give, if any, to any criterion of merit considered and established by the board. So walk me through again. The idea is that they would meet minimum scoring guidelines or requirements, go through a random number generator, and then the board will determine on a case-by-case basis the relative weight. I mean, I think that language does not is not directed at just suitability. I mean, it says, it doesn't say as to suitability. It says that the board's going to make that determination when it issues licenses, but say that was just suitability. What are the parameters of how we would look at the relative weight to any criterion of merit? So a criterion of merit is life experience. So when they come before us after they've been through the random number generator, we would decide, okay, I don't understand, how does weight work when somebody comes to us through a random number generator, they've already been selected?
They've only moved through that part of the licensing process. That's all it is. We have the application process where we have the minimum scoring guidelines. There's a very few, and that one, agreed, there's very few options that you have to meet in that one. That is a diversity plan, minimum amount of funds, and now would potentially be a letter support in this one. Once you meet that minimum score guideline, then you can go into the draw process for the random number generator. If you're selected at that point, let's say we select 10 licenses at that point, they all have to go through a suitability analysis. And suitability analysis takes into account all the criteria of merit that are listed in the statutes. And again, they're also listed under 4.047 as well. The relative weight, again, there's no requirement that we give an actual number for a relative weight. This is basically the board's analysis of the suitability investigation that is presented to you by, again, by the investigation division. They're going to have concerns. They're going to have positives. Again, you'll be able to go through that and decide to give it whatever weight you wish to give it.
Why would we give it any weight when it's a suitability investigation? I don't, because when we look at suitability of transfers of interest, we're not applying weight. We're determining, do they have disqualifications? So we're not determining, do they have the life experience, education? We're not giving weight. So how does that work? How does giving weight at that point work?
I'd beg to differ. You are giving weight to each and every one of these transfer of interests that come in front of you. You are agreeing that this company has the right to have a license in this state. So you are going through almost all of this as well. I've heard you before question their life experience. You particularly question their life experience of how they were operating.
of what they've done in the past. Again, all these questions have come forward that cover the criteria of merit.
Yeah, I think that is very much twisting what relative weight means, because when it says minimum scoring guidelines in consumption lounge, in the consumption lounge NRS, it doesn't say minimum scoring guidelines anywhere other than consumption lounges, right? When it says relative weight, it only says relative weight as it relates to how they were awarded in the past, the scoring and ranking. It doesn't say relative weight in our suitability NRS. It doesn't say it anywhere other than specifically a scoring and ranking process. So minimum guidelines, again, are in the consumption NRS, and now they've just been ported over here, but we don't have any enabling NRS to do that. And then when it comes to relative weight, the definition, I think, is being twisted. I am trying to understand how that could possibly mean what it's being proposed to mean.
It just means that and I understand everybody went through that 2017 process. You have an idea of the way it should be now, even though that process was massively litigated for all kinds of potential problems, including corruption. We are just, again, looking at another version of that. We are not bound by how that process occurred prior. We are changing that process. It still falls within the statutes. You're still giving weight to all these decisions. It's just, again, a different way of looking at the process.
I have a couple more questions, and I can understand why you want to avoid that litigation, but there were proposals to do it this way in the legislature, and they didn't pass. So I think, again, that has to be taken up with the legislature.
I don't think it was ever brought in front of the legislature, this process, and I do believe—
No, they didn't even give it a hearing. That's correct.
I believe the legislator particularly opened up a, what is it, under 678A, again, a commitment to the consideration of social equity. It again, I think, looks at this type of process. And they did pass that.
I'm sorry, we adopted this process, or
No,
the legislature adopted the last process.
Sorry, I didn't mean to—
Oh, no, me either, me either. Go ahead.
That we took on as one of our guiding principles, a commitment to the consideration of social equity. And again, social equity in these contexts have always been under the random number generator.
Well, I think the random number generator is the opposite of considering social equity. Prior to the changes to the preamble, we actually, it's still in there. It says that licenses will be issued with consideration that it's representative of the community, and a random number generator doesn't take social equity into consideration at all. It's random. It doesn't take it into consideration. I do have a couple more questions.
Oh, no, please.
I don't understand how the community support letter works. So if you have, say, 5 applicants and the local government gives one a support letter, that allows that one to qualify to go into the random number generator?
Correct. To be blunt, if there was only one, there would be no random number generator. That one would be granted the prospective license.
So, okay, so this is, let me ask a couple of questions, but maybe it would be helpful if you just have the chance to fully explain how that works, because maybe I'm jumping ahead. If they only give one a letter, then there is no random number generator. So the local government, you're not saying if only one applies, then there's no random number generator. You're saying if 5 apply and the local government gives one a letter, done deal.
Correct.
Okay. I know that there's been an assessment of how this has worked in other jurisdictions. I wonder if that has taken into consideration that when a lot of these lawsuits have happened when it was the local government that was completely in charge. I mean, a lot more of litigation has occurred when it was the local government that had the decision. I think under this, it seems to give the local government complete discretion, the board less discretion than the local government. And I think as a result of that litigation in 2019, the board was created. I mean, we all know that. We all know that for a couple of reasons, the board was created, but a large part of it was in response to that litigation. And the idea was there will be 5 independent board members, no pecuniary interest in the industry, people we trust, people from these backgrounds. Pick, we've got a former Supreme Court justice, a former gaming control board member. In order to, these people are beyond, those allegations. So they would of course never be involved in corruption. And so the answer to that litigation was creating the CCB and having these independent, experienced members who have the respect in the community that they will not take, be on the take or anything. So I don't think it's a good approach to absolve ourselves of this and kick it down to the local governments.
I
The
think
decision on who gets licensed, yeah.
the reason we are open to doing it this way in the regulations is because this is limited to maybe 6 licenses altogether. Again, this only takes into effect counties that have not participated in the cannabis industry up to this point. Again, it allows, again, based on that statute, which I believe 678B220 subsection 3, I believe, it allows the counties serious input into the economic development of their counties. Also, it doesn't relinquish all of our responsibility. They still have to get through the suitability check and the board granting that license to that individual. If they don't qualify, if they don't meet the suitability requirements, you do not have to give them a license.
Can I respond one last time that, and then I get that we're limiting it, and I appreciate that because I think that was an effort to appease opposition. And so the proposal is taking comments into consideration. So I really appreciate that. I still think we don't have the authority for the reasons stated at previous meetings and this meeting, because it is very clearly contemplated by the legislature that we would follow the relative weight of the criterion of merit rather than a random number generator. Those are clearly delineated in NRS. But I do also appreciate the position staff has been in with wanting to meet the needs of something that we would all like to resolve. And I do. I think everyone wants to see White Pine get this license. So I just want to be clear that I understand the position that staff has been in. I still just don't think we have the authority.
And our senior deputy attorney generals, multiple of them have disagree with you. That's all.
Any other questions of staff or legal? Okay. Director Klimas, did you have anything to add?
No, I didn't, Chair. Thank you, Tyler Clemens, for the record. I just wanted to reiterate some of the public comments that came in that this, even though 5.020 exists for all established going forward, and Deputy Director Miles did a good job talking about what would have to happen, and obviously the board is the final say on any new rounds. While that is general, the rest is specific. These proposed regulations are specific only to a limited medical-only licensing round for cultivation production for a jurisdiction that did not participate initially or does not have one. So it is about as narrow as it gets. So thank you.
Correct.
Thank you. Any additional comments, concerns, questions before we open it up for public comment? Okay, and we'll open it up for public comment. If you could come up and please state your name for the record and whether you're in favor or opposed, in opposition of the regs or in favor of the regs. We welcome your comments. Thank you very much.
Good morning. It is still morning. Good morning, Chairwoman, members of the board. Amanda Connor with the law firm of Connor and Connor. I believe most, if not all of the stakeholders want White Pine to get the medical licenses that they have petitioned for and been requesting. And I understand the sense of urgency to get that done, but it must be done within the confines of the statutory permits. The legislature clearly envisioned a different type of application and licensing process for consumption lounges than for all other types of cannabis establishments. NRS 678B 280 says, consideration in determining whether to issue a license for adult use cannabis establishments other than cannabis consumption lounges. NRS 678B 280 and 240, when discussing applications for everything except a cannabis consumption lounge, says that the board shall consider a criteria of merit when issuing the licenses. In contrast, when discussing a lounge, while merit is discussed in 678B.324 says for lounges, the board must establish a minimum required score for merit. And then 327 says if there are more applicants for a lounge license than there are available in a local jurisdiction, the board can use the lottery to determine who gets the license. To be clear, a random number generator is a lottery. The lottery only appears once in all of 678B, and it is in relation to issuance of lounge licenses. The language minimum required score only appears once, and it is in relation to licensing of lounges. In distinction, all other types have criteria of merit that must issue the licenses. The statute is clear, and as Member Durrett pointed out, the legislature had the opportunity at this last legislative session, and they declined to act. They want a different process for lounges than for all other types of establishments. Trying to simply modify the lounge licensing regs to fit what is statutorily required for all other types of licenses in an attempt to avoid litigation is like trying to fit a square peg in a round hole. Again, I think everyone wants White Pine to get these licenses, but what's appropriate is to follow the statutory mandates. Thank you.
Thank you. And for the record, my name is Donna Bath from Silver Lion Farms. And I don't know if it's appropriate because maybe I'm not understanding the process. I don't know if it's appropriate to ask questions. And I certainly don't want to do something that's going to, as the last time we were told, push it out another 5 or 6 months. And maybe I'm not understanding, but if I could ask a question, if it's not permitted, I'll be happy to sit down. But under 5.04 on page 6, it says cannabis establishment prospective and conditional in bold pursuant to NCCR. That says number generator. Now, if you go back and look at 678B 300, it clearly exempts medical from any round or anything else. It exempts it. So maybe I'm confused, and again, I'm learning this world, so please bear with me. I'm just trying to clarify. So,
Member Douglas, for the record, I think your confusion is probably appropriate. We're trying to do, I guess, a lot of things in fairness. We start from the position the county is entitled to have the licenses. The question is, how do you pick the licenses? And if there's only one applicant, there's never a problem, usually, unless the person doesn't meet the minimum criteria. The problem is if you have multiple people applying, how in fairness do you decide who has the most merit? It is a very subjective issue. I think the attempt is to get out of the subjective by saying if you meet the criteria of merit, you get a license. But I think we've kind of put a cart before the horse, so to speak. I think part of what Member Durrett was saying, we have to explore the merit to make sure they meet the criteria of merit. Now we get into the very delicate issue of saying, do we then have to rank them, or do we only say for merit? If you've met the merit base, then we consider those people of equal status, and we go to a generator to make sure there's not political or overreaching favoritism to get above that. So maybe we're trying to do too much the way this has been structured, and the way I hear them saying, okay, we're going to do this minimum criteria to get an application. We don't consider merit till the end. That may be problematic, where we should be considering merit before a random selection to see if we have only one, like you said, there's not a problem. If we have two, there may be a problem. We're going to have to say, oh, we think you're better than this person by a hair or by a flea, whatever, on this day. And I think that's the devil in the details, and trying to then adhere to what the state has articulated or not articulated with the merit situation. And the merit situation has created problems in all jurisdictions. A number of jurisdictions have tried to refine the merit to go to some type of unbiased final selection if you meet merit standards. So we're having application standards. If you meet those, and we don't get into merit till after, it's almost like we should be looking at merit before to make sure they were even qualified to compete.
And can I ask one more question or make one more comment? And again, if it's inappropriate, I apologize, but
Well, Ms. Bath, this might help you too, that once we get done with comments, what I'm going to ask is for council maybe to clarify some of those points where we're having some issues with.
okay, so I guess my concern is that this is going to only be for the counties that have not yet had the opportunity to get into the cannabis industry. So the counties that came before us for medical or whatever, for just medical, not consumption lounges, they didn't have to go through a number generator. It didn't exist. So there's only, well, we did the population, and there's no counties that are over 55,000, meaning rural, out of the 15. A few of them already have these licenses in place, so there's a handful that do not. So my question or my concern is, we're being placed under the burden of doing a random number generator, where the counties that have already received these medical licenses have not. And I fully understand that you haven't dealt with the regs, but we've been going through this for 2 years. I mean, it's not our company's fault that the regs weren't adopted or weren't done. And I'm not trying to be critical. I'm just trying to understand how we're meaning White Pine County, because we're the only one here asking, are going to be held at a different standard than previous counties that came in, because there were only consumption lounge regulations at that point. And so for us, we get just one. And so if we have a local county company, and yes, they may get a letter from the county supporting that, and we have 10 more from Clark County or Douglas or Reno that want to come and play in our playground, if you want to call it that, I don't see how that number generator is going to put us on equal ground with prior. And maybe I'm misunderstanding, and I'd appreciate an explanation. And sorry I've taken up so much time, but those are my concerns.
Thank you. And just for clarification, in that scenario that Ms. Bath talked about, the random number generator would not come into play if, say, the company in White Pine got the letter of approval from the county.
Correct.
It stops there.
If they only issue one letter of support, it would
And
stop.
it's for them, right? But if say 10 companies from Clark County, Washoe County, whatever, come down to White Pine County, and the county gives a letter of support to all 10, that's where the number generator would come into play. And then after that, then the suitability investigation would come up.
Correct. The suitability would be regardless, but correct. The random number generator would only come into effect if they issued either 0 letters or multiple letters.
Or more than one. Okay, thank you. Can I piggyback on something the member Douglas said? I know we're so far into this to now just be saying, for me to now be saying I still don't support it. But I thought when we voted down the random number generator 2 times, there would be other proposals. I know there's a slight modification here, although to me, it's a one that if we want to avoid litigation, we won't just purely leave this up to the local government. I feel like I've been remiss in not proposing a different alternative, but like I said, I thought there would be proposals of different alternatives coming our way. If this doesn't get passed today, I would be happy to be more proactive in proposing other methods, because I know, and again, I know that staff has been put in this tough position.
Okay, Mike Weeble, County Manager for White Pine County. And if I could just take a minute, if you have 5.035 open in front of you, I don't know, I don't want to have, it's not a Socratic method here, but I have some suggestions and might, and I don't often defend the AG's office, but there is some language in here that I think they wisely put in here that addresses Mr. Rutt's concern. So if you look in subparagraph C, now my version is highlighted as part of the public backup, right? And it talks about this mechanism that gets triggered, and it's like a path, and there's a bunch of, it's like a funnel. And so the start of the statute or the regulation starts wide and it narrows you down to your selection. And if you look down this path, on subsection C, it says whether the Board of County Commissioners wishes to provide the board with input on the impact that proposed cannabis establishment on the community by providing letters of support to applicants they determine will have a positive impact on the community. So what I envision is this regulation proposes a standard form, and I write White Pine County at the top, checkbox, want a medical establishment, checkbox, want to provide letters as, that's how I see it so far, right? Then, so C, I check the box. The county manager checks the box. We want to participate and provide letters of support. And then you read this language. It says letters of support will factor into the merit-based analysis on an applicant's eligibility to enter the random number generator. So in other words, it proposes that there is going to be a merit analysis for each of the applicants that are before the board prior to the random number generator. And I think that's what they put in there. And I think that addresses the concerns and the duty of the board legally to do a merit-based analysis prior. And so basically, we're going down this funnel. White Pine County says, yeah, we want to provide letters. You have 3 applicants in White Pine County. You do a merit analysis on all 3. All 3 have merit. One of the 3 has a letter in their packet in their application from White Pine County saying, hey, we know this company, they've been involved, they've been established, they pay their taxes, they follow the law. It specifically asks for the impact on the economy. We think that they'll bring a positive impact. This is the gross number of bales they produce annually. This is how we ship it locally. This is how they buy fuel locally. All those things. I write a letter to the board. That then goes into your analysis on who you're going to put into the generator, I suppose. And maybe they would have a little more chance than 2 other applicants. It's the way I'm reading this. And so you end up only putting 2 into the random number generator instead of 3. That's how I read this. Paragraph 3 is relatively unchanged. 4, then we're moving down our path. Should the board grant the request to issue a medical cannabis license pursuant to this section, the board shall open a licensing round specific to the county and accept applications as set forth in the regulation. That's fine. 5, if the Board of County Commissioners has opted, if county manager checked that box to provide the board input on the impact to the community as set forth in subsection 2C above, and has issued at least one letter of support to an applicant, then, this is the part that I just have a question on. Then, in addition to the minimum scoring guidelines set forth in these regulations, so it refers back to you guys doing a merit analysis and minimum scoring guidelines prior to the random number generator. The applicants for the medical cannabis establishment license issued, I wanted you guys to correct that to issued instead of issues. Pursuant to this section must obtain from the Board of County Commissioners a letter of support saying that the proposed medical cannabis establishment will have a positive impact to the community. The only question I have on there is, we say we want to participate, and then so if we say we want to participate, then your applicant, is this saying your applicant has to provide a letter? That's the only question I have, because but it seems to me that this process, it does have the step-by-step where we send a notice on your petition that you guys prepared saying we want, the Board of County Commissioners wants to participate. We say then we want an establishment. We then sign the box saying we want to provide a letter of support. We either then provide the letter of support or the establishment gets a letter of support from us for their application. Either way, there's going to be a letter before the board. You do a merit analysis and you decide based on merit who you're going to put in that random number generator. So they're all pre-qualified. And then now it's just left up to a lottery at that point. So you're still using your entrusted duty to weed out unqualified and even use other objective criteria to get them into the random number generator. And we would hope, it doesn't say that without a letter, they don't make it in here. Not precisely.
That is how that would work, though. If they did not submit, if you submit a letter and one submits a letter with their package, and that only one submits a letter with their package, there wouldn't be a random number generator. That person would be granted the prospective license.
Okay.
If you submit multiple ones and they submit 2 or 3 letters, then we would have a random number selector based on the ones that the county submitted letters of support for.
And so that was kind of my question. I'm just trying to navigate this also so we don't have issues going forward as well, if you do adopt this today. But it says letters of support will factor into the merit-based analysis on an applicant's eligibility to enter the random number generator. So if whatever your merit-based system says is that there's a final box on your merit-based eligibility that says, do they have a letter from the county? If the county want to participate and the answer is no, you're like, well, they're not eligible, then so be it. And that does put some of that onus on the county, which is a good and bad. It's a double-edged sword. I understand that, but we do that all the time at local government as we're analyzing applicants for licenses, special use permits. So, and ultimately, we're just kind of giving you an endorsement anyway, so you can consider it. So, I think that the language has some of those. I think it does put your duty before the random number generator, which is I just wanted to point out because I think you could adopt this process. You do only have, as far as I know, one rural county asking you to look at this right now. And if it goes kind of sideways, we can always come back and change things. But it'll be White Pine County figuring it out, which is not the first time in the state's history. So I'd ask you to go ahead and approve this with a couple of these little mild modifications and edits so we can move forward and try to get a qualified applicant before you.
Member Direct, can I ask a question that's related to this before we move on? This is what I was also looking for to ask Mr. Rath about before the hearing. Will factor into the merit-based analysis. Thank you for finding that for me. Even if we adopted these today, we don't have a merit-based analysis set forth, so we'd have to come back to the table to do that. Because if you want to, if the idea is we just apply the minimum scoring guidelines, that's not what it says here. It says merit-based analysis, and those that merit-based analysis, according to what we discussed earlier, you're equating with suitability that occurs after the random number generator. Here, it appears it would occur before the random number generator, and then I think there'd be argument about, well, are we looking at suitability? Are we looking at a random, are we looking at a merit-based analysis? Either way, we don't have this framework, so we'd have to adopt more regulations to effectuate this, correct?
I'll let your Debbie breath kick in, but the merit-based analysis happens in the application and the suitability. It's all one long continuous application process. No one gets a license until we're at the final stage where everybody goes through their final inspections. So the application, when you're looking at the application, it's more of a binary, but it is still a criteria merit analysis. Suitability is not a binary criteria merit analysis. That's all it is.
And that's correct. And to add to that, basically what happens is if the county issues letter of support, that is an additional minimum scoring requirement to get into the random number generator. If there's 3 applicants and there's no letter of support from the county, then they would just all go into the random number generator. If there's 1 letter of support, that is a minimum scoring requirement, and that license is automatically awarded. If there's 5 letters of support for 5 applicants, they all meet the minimum scoring guidelines, which are, again, criteria of merit, and those 5 would go into the random number generator. And as far as the language, all it's saying is if you've got the applicant, if the applicant gets that letter of support to the county, they're responsible for putting it in their application materials. That's all. That makes sense?
Can I follow up? I'm even more confused now. Why would their score, why would they need, okay, so say this letter's 5 more points.
If there's no
What does their
it's not-
score
it's a
matter?
It's a binary process. At the
Okay,
beginning.
but Mr. Rath, you said the score, when this will be these will be additional points. You said it will increase their score.
No. Go ahead.
Yeah, it does increase the score, but
So
it
why,
means
how does,
that score
it
is
does,
the
but
only
it
score that can
doesn't?
move forward. A lesser score cannot move forward in the application process.
Okay,
That's all it means.
I'm sorry, say that again.
It means the lesser scores cannot move forward in the application process is all that means.
Okay, so score doesn't matter. Like you're saying, it's a binary process. It's yes or no. So when it says merit-based analysis, there's no analysis. It's yes or no.
That's still an analysis. Binary analysis is still analysis.
Okay, so the analysis, the criteria of merit analysis is yes or no.
In that portion of the application process, or that portion of the license process, correct.
Okay. This is a little, I'll hold on to this question. Thanks.
May I be heard again briefly?
No, I just have one quick question for staff. The merit criteria is embedded in the application.
Some of the merit is embedded in the application, and it's listed that you have to give everything else after you've been drawn, which is all listed in 5.042. So yes, it is the minimum scoring guidelines, which is merit criteria, is in the application.
Okay, and I just want to clarify something that council said, which confused me a little bit. I thought that if you have 10 applications and all 10 have letters of support, then we would go to the random number generator. If there's 10 applications and only 1 has a letter of support from the locals, that 1 with a letter gets the license.
Correct.
There would be no need for the random number generator in that scenario.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair, thank you. Mike Weeble for the record again. The idea that if you may be thinking, how could a county commission give more than 1 letter? Because they're a political board and they don't want to, sometimes they just say, we love everyone. We're good with all 3 of these companies. We see merit in all 3 companies. We'll send all 3 through with letters. And then that's where you end. On your end, you've already done your whatever analysis it is, whatever merit-based analysis you're conducting, whether it's the long application on an investigation or whatever on all the applicants. Once all 3 of those that got letters, all 3 have been looked at, being pre-vetted through their application process, have merit to continue. Some have been rejected. Then they would all go in, and then you'd have the fate, Vegas odds on who gets it, or it gets to move forward. It's not, they don't automatically get it at that point either. They just have to move forward with the the due diligence process and continual screening by the CCB. So it's not like the CCB, I see it this way as written, the CCB is not giving up its authority or duty to investigate. It's doing the pre-look, the pre-investigation, pre-qualification, merit-based analysis through the application. There are still things that the CCB is going to require that these applicants have to have on their application to be even eligible on a merit base that you will be able to screen out. Then they have the additional thing, they got to go and try to get a county commission letter because that's the silver bullet, at least part of it. And then after, if they're chosen through the random number generator, then there's still some due diligence, investigation, and final review that CCB does. And it can still kick out applicants at that point and go back to either the next number in the generator or whatever. So
correct.
It seems like there's sufficient safeguards to protect the CCB. The county's taking on a little more liability here, which is kind of what I asked for, I guess, the last time. So I see this as a kind of a good compromise, a very difficult situation. I do still support it. And I think there is enough of a look in here that you can still exercise the duty you've been given under the statute. Thank you.
Thank you. And any other comments? Okay. And then we also have some comments online, and we have to go up to the north as well. So if we could keep our comments
Very brief.
very brief. Thank you.
I picked up on what Member Durrett said, that if we don't have regulations in place for merit, did I misunderstand what you said? I guess my concern is, how long is it going to take to do that? We're already in 2.5 years. Do we have to go through more workshops, or is this?
I believe that staff already answered that, said that the actual, they're not regulations, but the merit criteria is built into the application.
Okay, thank you.
For the record, I'm Bob Grocco, CEO of Silverline Farms. I want to give you my perspective, not a legal perspective, a business perspective on this. This is not my first industry. I've run companies in 7 industries, and I can see parallels from other industries. And the way when I read this in my comments earlier today, I looked at this as, what do you want? The county wants the best business partner for the county. They want they want the company they know who is going to bring economic diversification to the county. What does the CCB want? You don't want lawsuits, right? You want somebody who's going to do a good job, not create issues, and pay taxes. So that's what we all want. And when I read the new regulations, I read it as the county is being put in a position where they're kind of a gate. That's my word. There's a bit of a gating process here where they can provide that letter, which is a gating process, and then it goes to the merit. So I don't like the random number generator. I don't think there should be anything random about this. But it's either going to be a random number generator or some additional merit-based process. I agree with Mike. We talked before at the other workshop that the application itself is merit. And then there's a suitability requirement. At the end of the day, the company's got to pass because the license comes from the state. So one of my concerns has been all along, and I stated it very explicitly, and this is where the parallel comes from other industries, that there's a license squatting issue. And I talked about the issue of license squatting happens. Why does it happen? Because companies like to tie up license. Why? To prevent competition. So when I talked about license squatting, last time I was here before this board, I actually had a couple of the license squatters reach out to me, and they told me, they said, you're right, this happens. And they came clean and told me why they do it. So what I'm trying to prevent, my hope in my comments is prevent this phenomenon where you get license squatting and the county doesn't get the true economic diversification it's looking for. So when I look at everything and I look at as a business person, am I okay with these regulations? I think they're good. I think they're about the best you can do with all the different things you're trying to accomplish here. The bottom line, I would encourage you to pass it.
Any other public comment in the South? Okay, seeing none, we'll go to the North. Member Young, any comment in the North? I see somebody coming up to the dais.
Thank you, Chair Guzman Freilich, Vice Chair Durrett, Brett Scolari here on behalf of Strategies 360 and our clients CPCM Holdings, Green Mart of Nevada, Clark Natural Medicinal Solutions, and Cura Cannabis Solutions. I'll be brief. I don't want to reiterate the points. I have spoken on this at other points in the process, but I do echo the comments that have been made by Amanda Connor and the written submissions of the Nevada Cannabis Association and David Goldwater from INYO. And I just wanted to stress a couple points. What you've heard today is an industry that supports White County's efforts in the CCB authorizing these medical establishment licenses under NRS 678B 220. However, we again direct our concerns on the random number generator provision. It is clear that this random generator process has not been authorized by the legislature anywhere in statute, and that is very clear. What the legislature has authorized is a weighted merit-based application system under NRS 678B 240. And it should be noted that this statute, along with the other statutes that set up the merit-based system, were proposed to be repealed in SB 33 of this last legislative session. The legislature chose not to act on that bill and move that bill forward. So that's a clear indication they did not want to take that subject matter up. So what does 678B.240 authorize? It says that the board must consider criteria of merit that must include without limitation 9 separate items of criteria set forth in that section. And it also provides that the board adopt regulations for determining the relative weight of each of those criteria. And I want to focus on relative weight. I just did a simple search. Relative weight revealed the following in my search. It contemplates a relative weight to each criterion based on how important that criterion is to the decision maker. Another place I found it, a weighted decision applies different weights to different criteria based on importance to the decision-making body, while an unweighted decision assumes all criteria have the same weight and importance. And I think that's what we're proposing today, which again, I believe strongly that it conflicts with the statute. So the Reg 5 proposal as currently written contemplates an unweighted system that I believe conflicts with the current statutory framework. There is a way to accomplish, I think, within the existing statute and satisfy the concerns of White Pine County, other rural counties. If you were to assign different weights through criteria, including assigning a larger weight to subsection, for example, subsection 1F of NRS 678B 240, a criteria that is assumed extremely important to White Pine and other rural counties, and it states as follows: the likely impact of the proposed medical cannabis establishment on the community in which it is proposed to be located. There's nothing preventing this board right now from assigning a larger weight to that criteria and soliciting input from White Pine County or any other county that fits this provision of needing a medical license. So in closing, we respectfully urge you to reject the proposal in its current form and revise to comply with the merit-based and weighted system authorized and required in statute. Thank you very much, and we appreciate your time. And I'm also available for any questions and available to participate if we are allowed the opportunity to revise this. Thank you.
Any additional comment in the north? I'm sorry, what was that?
There's no additional comment in the north.
Okay, thank you. Now we'll go online. Sarah, we have some comments online.
Callers wishing to provide public comment, dial *9 to raise your hand. Caller ending in 9668, please state your name before providing your comment.
Hi, Lake Martin on behalf of the Nevada Cannabis Association. Thank you and good morning to Chair Guzman-Freilich, Vice Chair Durrett, members of the board. Thanks for the opportunity to participate remotely. We submitted a detailed letter, so I will keep this brief. We support White Pine County's efforts to move forward with economic development, and we agree, of course, that the cannabis industry is incredibly beneficial to the counties within which it operates and the state as a whole. Our primary concern, which has been echoed by numerous of the commenters before us, is the expansion of the use of a lottery or random number generator to all future licensing rounds. The lottery system is only mentioned in the statute once in 678B, where it's referenced as a tool to be used for lounge license applications. There hasn't been a broader policy discussion by the legislature as to whether the lottery is aligned with the state's goals of promoting a safe and successful cannabis industry. In fact, there was a CCB bill to revise the statute to extend the lottery to all future licensing rounds, and that bill did not move forward. And the board itself has been divided as to whether a lottery should be used for all license types. So as we've highlighted in prior hearings and workshops on this topic, the statute requires that when issuing medical licenses, certain criteria of merit be considered and that the board shall assign relative weight to the various criteria. Those parameters already exist in statute, as been mentioned again and again. We have that already to move forward with the medical licensing round, and the board would just need to develop a rubric to evaluate the applications pursuant to 678B 240. As Member Durrett stated, so the current draft would essentially allow for the county to pick their preferred licensee by only issuing one letter in support. The statute allows for county input to be a factor for consideration, but this system does seem to give a disproportionate weight to a county's preference for one applicant over another. And if a random number generator supports social equity through random selection, and I'm not sure there's support for this contention, but this has been raised and the legislature hasn't adopted this. But if the contention is that a lottery supports diversity, it's unclear how allowing an applicant to skip the lottery by getting a letter from an elected county commission would also reach the goal of promoting diversity. It does not seem to. So what I think this shows is that we need to have a broader policy discussion on whether a lottery should be used for future rounds and whether it accomplishes the state's goals. I do want to thank the board and staff for all of their work on the regulations so far. And again, we do support White Pine moving forward with a narrow licensing round. We do believe that there is a path forward for issuing these licenses, but the lottery should not be expanded without clear direction from the legislature. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have additional comment online?
Caller ending in 2119, please dial *6 to unmute and state your name before providing comment.
Oh, hello. My name is Timothy Eliado.
I'm sorry, can you speak up? We can't hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Hey, good afternoon. My name is Timothy Eliado, speaking on behalf of Cora Lounge. I was there pretty earlier, and I'm back to work now. I had to leave earlier. I just wanted to state this for the record that just imagine the scenario, because I hear basically opinions based on the lottery system. So I'd like to place my input. Please imagine a scenario where the CCB had placed a subcommittee chair to basically make this specific distinction. This decision was made solely on them. They decided to go with the idea of the random number selector. We had no input. We had no say. They went along with that. You're in one of the recorded subcommittee meetings. She could be heard on there saying in a jokingly manner that, hey, I have 7 or more applicants or 8 applicants, why don't they all receive the licenses? And hey, lo and behold, it did happen as a reality. This is the reality of the number selector. Look into this process, and I would urge each and every input and opinion to be given the light of day that it deserves. Because unfortunately, the CCB, and I'm not speaking on behalf of the staff, I'm talking about the head, and specifically Tyler Clemens, and we do urge that he respectfully resign from his position based on how he had mismanaged, and he had basically ran a system which was in its own sovereign agency without any legislative oversight. This is time. This is a new day. This is a new beginning, and I hope the governor's office is paying attention to what is currently being discussed, because this has been our nightmare. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Any additional comments online?
There's no additional public comment.
Thank you. Yes, there's one last comment, brief comment.
Thank you for the opportunity. Again, it's Bob Parocco, CEO of Silver Lion Farms. I just wanted to really emphasize, we're talking about a very narrow pool. I understand the industry is worried about having this random number generator expanded beyond this. I totally understand that. I don't like it at all. But for this narrow pool, using the county as the gate to prevent license squatting, that's the main thing that I wanted to bring up. It could go back to the state. The state issues the license. The CCB issues the license. Anybody who makes it through the county gate, it can go back. Just remove random number generator and call it a more traditional merit-based evaluation. That would solve this. I think it would make the industry happy as well. That's my last comment.
Okay, thank you. Okay, let's bring it back to the board then if there's no additional comments for discussion. Any discussion with the board members? Anything up north? Okay. All right, then I will then entertain a motion. Do we have a motion? Okay, this is the first since I've been on this board. There's no motion. Okay, so is there any additional discussion? Okay, it looks like and our dad could tell me whether or not I think this item well, you know what? Hold on a second. Just for discussion purposes, I want to find out what everybody's concern is. I'll make the motion. I'm going to make a motion that we vote on this proposed regulation after all of this discussion. Is there a second?
Member Drat, I second.
Okay, discussion.
Member Drat, for the record, I don't want to delay this any further, but I do want the board to entertain further proposals. So I would like it to come back perhaps in September so that others could quickly turn around alternative proposals without delay. I I think the issue, because everybody I think is on board with White Pine getting a license, it's just how we go about it. And the issue, there have been comments that this is very limited. Yes, it's very limited, but you either have the statutory authority or you don't. And if you don't have the statutory authority, it doesn't matter how limited it is. So that's where I stand. So I would be a no as is, but I would like to see the board consider alternative proposals very quickly.
Thank you. I have a question for our legal counsel. Is there anything prohibiting the random number generator as it relates to medical? Because I know we did it for the lounges, correct? But is there anything prohibiting, in law, prohibiting the number generator for the purposes of why we're here?
Not as far as I'm aware, there's no legislation that says you cannot use it for other new licenses. Consumption lounges were new licenses, and this is essentially a new licensing round. If it was used for one new licensing round, there's no prohibition against using it for another new licensing round, which that's my opinion.
Okay. Any other questions, comments, concerns?
Douglas, for the record, the concern I have is that we have to blend the merit component prior to use, and I use the word if necessary, of a random selection, random number selection. Merit is authorized by statute. We always have to look at statute as a precursor to doing anything. So in cases where we don't have multiple applicants, we don't have a generator or something like that. In cases where we have multiples, because one of the things that's clear in looking at some of the literature out there, whether you talk in terms of the term scoring or evaluation to establish merit, you must be consistent. It doesn't say that it has to be exact, that one person is 1 point over the other. You may decide applicants of merit, those within 5 points of each other, go forward, the rest fail. What is clear is the devil is in the details. We need to look at this to see if we can create a little more clarity. And that's why I was not supportive of this at this point. I think it's still too subjective in terms of how we are applying this if it goes forward. Because I'm hearing, oh, you submit this, and then we look at your merit later. Well, we kind of have to look at your merit before we put you in the pot, as far as I'm concerned. And then the question is, how do you define the merit? We define merit clearly. You got 71, you only got 70, you're the one, or do we say those within a 5-point range will be considered eligible for the license? Because just to be candid, the courts are over the map in terms of what they say goes and what doesn't and how they dig down. We can't be afraid of litigation, but we have to make sure that we put ourselves in a position to be successful or have a possibility of success. As Member Durrett has talked about, the random selection that's authorized kind of is a problem if that's the only criteria for selection. But if we're using the merit base as we're trying to, but we've not been real expansive as to what exactly that is and how we're going to use it, because I've heard two things today, that creates a problem down the road. Hey.
Thank you. Any additional questions, comments, concerns
today
from the board?
I know it's not specifically prohibited in statute. Not everything that the legislature doesn't want us to do is specifically prohibited. specifically mandated that we do this a certain way. So it wouldn't make sense to also at the same time say, and also, by the way, don't use the random number generator because that's in a different chapter or a different section. Also, there was an attempt to change this because there was a recognition that this wasn't how we were going to be doing it. And that attempt didn't happen, but it could happen at the next legislature. If you want that change, it has to be taken up with the legislature and they need to deliberate.
Okay. Thank you. Any comments in the north?
This is Member Young. I have a few concerns. I do have, personally, I support the random number generator if two candidates are exactly equal, some way to break the tie. But it sounds as though the statute doesn't necessarily exist, and I think the legislature had an opportunity to clarify in that. It sounds like they chose to pass on that opportunity. I also have some concerns with the county commissioner ability to write the letter. I do support, I want them to be involved. I think that's very important. But if you look at the merit-based system and you have one company or one applicant who has a significantly higher merit and a lower, and then they receive the letter, then they'll get the license. I guess I'm a little concerned if it's two that are the same, and then the board of commissioners write the letter and support, then that's enough to push them over. I certainly understand that, but it sounds like that could be superseded by the county commissioners. I guess I just need a little more clarification on what that would be.
Thank you, Member Young. Okay. Any additional questions, concerns? One comment I will make is that we've had many comments here, and but no real proposed language. So I would encourage then if you have comments, concerns, proposals, then submit those. I know we've had some comments that were submitted late last night or yesterday, but early on would be appreciated, and then that way it gives us something to work with. If we've been at it for a long time, at least since I've been on this board, and I know that White Pine's been at it for 2+ years, and so I know people make jokes about government, but this is ridiculous, right? So we'll get going on this, but first let's take a vote. We have a first and a second. We've had some discussion, some concerns and comments, and so now let's go to the vote.
Ask you to repeat the motion so clear as to what we're voting on.
Sure. And my motion was that we vote on the proposed, on staff's and legal's proposed regulations that we have before us today.
Member
For passage.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I have to withdraw my second. I thought the motion was to take a vote to generate discussion. Is the motion to
That's also my
adopt
as
it?
well.
That's what you have? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Well, we've already had the discussion, so I guess we don't have to take the vote then. So is that your understanding? Could we read back the vote, the motion?
The motion was to enter into a vote on this agenda item only. And then there was a second by Member Derrick, and we've already had the discussion.
Okay. All right. And so do we need to take a vote on what we've already discussed?
Yes, there needs to be a vote on whether or not to vote on the agenda.
And the discussion. Oh my gosh. Okay. All right. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Is it aye? Any nay?
I'm a nay because I still don't understand where we're at.
Okay. All right. So,
would you like me to clarify? At least.
Because one of the issues was whether or not the second was still in play based on the motion. So I didn't hear if she was satisfied with what was said, that we were voting on what staff had presented, which meant affirming versus not affirming it.
So I think it would be best if the chair could confirm,
Of what we were voting on.
if you could confirm if Member Darrett's interpretation of your vote is correct. That it was only a motion to enter into a vote, not on the specific regulation.
That was not my intent. My intent on my motion was to basically put the item to a vote for approval. And so I got a yes for purposes of discussion. For purpose of a discussion, I made the motion for a yes vote, just to make it simple. Motion to approve, motion to approve the regulations for the purpose of discussion, right? And so you said yes for the purpose of discussion. We discussed it. So now to revisit the motion.
Well, just one moment. Member Darrett, having that clarification, do you withdraw your second?
Well, I could still second to have it go forward and then still vote no, right?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay, so let's leave it at that.
Perfect.
My
Okay.
second stands and then my vote will be no. Okay.
Okay. So
My vote would be no to not adopt it.
okay. So this is the vote on adopting the proposed regulations that are here before us today.
Am I, in light of what has been said back and forth, am I allowed to make a tabling motion
Correct. You are.
that would ask to have this matter brought back in 30 days and look to clarify the language within the statute?
And I would just ask, just for purposes of a clean record, let's decide
Yes.
the chair's motion first, and then after that, we can hear any subsequent motions, depending on what happens.
But a tabling motion took precedent.
Okay.
Can I second the tabling motion?
If there's a second, but tabling motions, my understanding is that they do take precedent.
Right. But I guess because I want to get a motion as it is today, I want to get an answer on what we have today. I think we owe that at least to White Pine County and to the industry. I think we deserve a vote, and then we can send it back to staff for new regulations, or to tweak it or what have you. But at least this is clean. We have a motion on the table for the adoption of the regulations as they sit here today. We had, for discussion purposes, we had a second, we had the discussion. So now we have the motion is up for a vote. All those in favor for the adoption of the regs as they sit here today, signify by saying aye. All those vote nay. Nay. No abstentions. Okay, I'm going to take so those were all nays. Okay, now do we have a new motion for sending it back to staff or what have you? What's your pleasure, Member Douglas?
I would make a motion to send this back to staff to look at the comments that were made today by the public as well as statements made by the board, and see if we can come up with one or two versions to be presented next month as to this, considering the issues that have been raised about merit, clarification of what that is, and also use or non-use of the random generator. But those are the considerations.
I will second that.
May I request to add to that motion that there be a meeting with those that submitted comments to iron out some proposed language to bring back and hopefully come to a consensus?
And if you might have interrupted, I think we have to have a 30-day notice on hearing this language as well, which I don't think we can quite do by next board meeting.
Well, can that notice be issued today, but the actual language published closer to the meeting?
We could, this is a completely new process. Completely. All this is basically going to be scrapped and start over. So if you think we can get language you want to vote on within the next day. We couldn't get it done in the last 9 months.
I mean,
And I've asked for input from multiple
so
other
let me
attorneys,
ask,
lobbyists, everybody
if
on
the
this.
notification includes, we're NCCR, which NCCRs are being changed? No, you can be specific enough to give notice of the 30-day notice, and then actually publish the proposed language when it gets closer. The 30-day notice could include which NCCRs you're amending and a general description of what would be decided on. It doesn't have to be the actual language 30 days out, correct?
At this juncture, I would recommend the actual language just so that there's clarity, but that's just my opinion.
We've been doing this for a long time, and I think that if we're going to do it right, then I think we need to take the time. I'm not talking 9 months later, but I'm just talking about if it's going to take, the next couple of months to get this new language proposed, get the notices out, and get some proposed language from all of those that are opposing it. If they have language to propose, and propose it, and then we can sit down and narrow it down and come up with a better option, or at least an option that everybody will be in agreement.
Madam Chair, if that's hearing what you're saying, I still would like to see us keep the feet to the fire, so to speak. Then I would withdraw my motion I presented, but restated to bring it back in 60 days. I realize that's a very short date, but that at least puts the burden on us to come up with something, or attempt to come up with something to be done in 60 days. That gives us hopefully 30 days to figure out what we're doing, get it out there for the public to see with 30-day notice, as you're saying, of what that is. That's a short timeline. Otherwise, we get into 90 days or 120 days, and it's like, no, that's just too damn long.
Okay.
That's my motion.
Do we have a second?
Member Merritt, second.
Thank you. We got a second. Any discussion on the motion? Okay. Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries, and we will see this back here within 60 days. Okay, thank you. And now we have, we go on to item number 6, which is the approvals and resolutions. Presentation, Steve up north.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon to you and Vice Chair and members of the board. Steve Gilbert for the record. Agenda item 6A is an informational item presented as a notice to the board of establishments that have been issued their final license since the last board meeting. Item number 1 is for Dune Operating Holdings LLC, which was awarded a conditional medical cultivation and conditional adult use cultivation license in the North Las Vegas jurisdiction. On May 10th, 2023, CCB staff conducted a pre-opening inspection and audit of the retail store facility, and the results revealed the facility was in compliance with the NCCR and NRS. The statement of no deficiency was issued on May 12th, 2023, demonstrating that Dune has met the regulatory operational requirements. And as a result, the CCB approved and issued final license to Dune for its medical and adult use cultivation establishment on July 25th, 2023. Item number 2 is for Essence Henderson LLC. Who applied and was granted a conditional adult use retail store in the North Las Vegas jurisdiction. On July 3rd, 2023, CCB staff conducted a pre-opening inspection and audit of the retail store facility located at 3930 West Craig Road, Suites 101, 103, and 104. And the results revealed the facility was in compliance with NCCR and NRS. The statement of no deficiency was issued on July 11th, 2023, demonstrating that Essence Henderson has met the regulatory operational requirements. And as a result, the CCB approved and issued final licensure to Essence Henderson for its adult use cannabis establishment on July 25th, 2023. Chair, I'll turn this item back to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that was just for information only. Let's see, we have the briefing of I don't have any briefing, but thank you for your patience during my first meeting, but I will pass it over to our executive director for his briefing.
Thank you, Chair. Tyler Klimas for the record. Quick brief, just an update following last board meeting on the item on the matters with CanX and lettuce test. Just to inform the board, we have begun some discussions with CanX, and so that's the extent of my update. They are happening and will continue to happen, and we will provide any kind of update on those to the board next month if there is an update to provide. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, and just housekeeping, item number 8. Looks like our next meeting is September 26, 2023. We don't have any items for future agendas other than this item, 60 days. The one that we just got done with White Pine County and the regulations. Finally, last public comment. Anybody in the South, do you have any public comments?
Chair, can I pitch something for future agendas?
Oh.
Just and kind of status on excluded felonies, kind of related to the public comments about excluded felonies. Where are we at on that? Mr. Robbins, I think his name was. Will he qualify under that, etc.? Thank you.
Thank you, and we'll put that on there. And we did release, thank you, I probably should have provided this in my update. Tyler Klimas for the record. We did release a 6-month schedule of workshops, proposed workshops, just so stakeholders can kind of start wrapping their head around different items. One of those will be Reg 4, I believe, November, if you correct me. November, in that we plan to include that excluded felony petition process. So we'll put that out as far in advance as we can, and obviously hope we get a lot of feedback on that.
We can't do that before January 1, right? I mean, it will not become effective till January 1. So it's
Correct,
like we
can work on it
anyway. Okay.
before, and that's in best case, we have it prepared, ready to go, but it is not effective until January 1st.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Last public comment before we adjourn.
Michael Burgess for the record, Chairwoman Fairlick, distinguished board members, Executive Director Klimas. I'd like to thank Deputy Director Michael Miles for a sidebar, but I would like to give more information that I am not here. My grievance here today is not around the NRS. Our grievance here today is a closed session I had with this board on April 26th of 2022. In that board, in that closed session, Chairman Douglas was the chairman at the time. At the end of our session, he asked for a document that I sent on technology. I am a super nerd. I am not here to sell cannabis or really be in the I'm here to present technology that is public safety and public health. It was a request of the chairman to investigate this technology legal document in 60 days. It's been over a year and some time, and I have not received a response. I have called, left a voicemail. I have left messages on urgent situations dealing with my IP and this technology. I am not an attorney. I sent legal terminology. If this legal terminology, which directly speaks to the governor of the state of Nevada, also speaks to the administrator of Nevada, which starting July 1st of Senate Bill 433, the administrator starting July 1st is now the Chief Information Technology Officer. Under him, this office that's in the governor's office is also the Chief Innovation Officer. I bring this up because I bring innovation to this board, to this state, that is also being requested by Congress, the FDA, and the CDC as a national emergency. The law that I sent in directly speaks to the governor to look at this as a emergency. If my legal interpretation is wrong, please let me know that. I once again say that this was an issue that was requested by the chairman at the time, Douglas, to be investigated for 60 days. I have not received a response in over a year. I first sent this document in October 2021. I only bring this because this document, technology, and public safety is my life. This is my company. I'm trying to bring this forth for the public safety of the cannabis industry. I'm hoping that the governor's office, the governor's chief of staff, and this board has looked at my application, my documentation, my demo that I sent in, the FDA, the CDC documentation that I sent in. I also have noticed that the Attorney General for the state of Nevada, Aaron Ford, with 16 other Attorney Generals, have sent in a complaint on this issue of Delta 8 and toxic cannabis. Once again, I only ask that I have some communication with either the staff or some response from the board on this document. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any additional comments in the South? Okay. Do we have any comment in the North? And I won't forget about the online.
No comment up north.
Thank you. Sarah, do we have any comments online?
There are no callers online.
Great. Okay. And let's see, with that, we will adjourn this meeting. Thank you all for your patience.